All right, so thanks. It's Tuesday, November 29th, and we're here for our public meeting of the Tucson Unified School District. Can I ask for a roll call to establish quorum, please?
Ms. Luna Rose,
Here.
Dr. Ravi,
Here.
Ms. Shaw,
Here.
Ms. Counts, Ms. Grijalva.
Here. Let the record show that Ms. Counts is not in attendance, and so there are 4 of us present. So I'm going to go ahead and move to the land acknowledgement statement, and I have Lene K. Am I saying your name, Lene? Am I saying your name correctly? There's a. Oops, I think you might be muted. Can you hear me okay? You can. Let's see. Hang on, I think we're having a little bit of an issue. Do you want to test? Say test. No, still can't hear you. Can you log out and log back in? You try that? Okay, and then we'll go on with Madison and wait for you. So if you can go ahead and try that, and then we'll let you right back in. Okay. All right, so we'll move to the Pledge of Allegiance, and leading us in the pledge is Madison Mesa. Are you Madison? Oh, no. Hang on a second. Can we unmute her? Is she muted? Let's see. Oh, I don't know if it's a speaker issue. Okay. You can hear, oh, and you can hear the other participants. And she thinks it's a speaker issue. That's unfortunate. I'm so sorry. Let's see. It says there's, well, darn it. Anyone else? It's our issue because you all can hear each other, right? Madison, you can hear each other.
Yeah, that's our issue.
Any suggestions, folks? That's frustrating. Okay. I'm so sorry. We're trying to fix it because we'd like to hear from you. Let's see. Do you want to unmute yourself and try? No. Are you all working on it? Okay. What?
Madison, can you hear me?
She can hear us. Can we have them call in?
We can dial in.
All right, what about now?
Try talking. Hi.
Yay!
Gotcha.
Good job. Way to go. Okay.
Go
Thank
ahead
you
and
so
mute.
much for your patience. Okay, so since I'll go ahead and Lene, can you unmute? Yeah. Yay, we can hear you. Okay, great. So am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Lene, yeah.
Lene K, right? Okay.
Yeah, Lene.
You're an 8th grader at Pistor Middle School, and you play softball. What other things are you interested in?
I would want to do cheer when I get into high school.
Uh-huh. And what high school are you going to attend?
I don't know. I think
Not
it's
yet.
either going to be Pueblo or Choya.
Okay, either one are good schools. So if you could read the land acknowledgement for us, we're going to go ahead and pull that up on the screen.
So I'm going to go back here, and when I come out, I want you to welcome Chrissy to the show.
Okay. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, go ahead whenever you're ready.
You tell me what you need.
On behalf of the governing board of the Tucson Unified School District, I, Lene K, acknowledge that the schools, buildings, and facilities of the Tucson Unified School District reside on the ancestral homeland of the Tohono O'odham Nation and the federally recognized tribal land of the Basbayaki tribe.
Thank you so much, Lene, and thank you for your patience. We really appreciate you being here and wish you a lot of luck at Pister for the rest of the year.
Thank you.
Good luck. Thank you. And now we're going to move to Madison. And this is Madison Mesa, and she is a 5th grader at Soling Tom Elementary School. And Madison's teachers say that you're a wonderful student. Always go above and beyond in your academic and personal pursuits. Madison is you're the current student council president?
Yes.
Madame President. You play the clarinet and you're active in gymnastics, was on the track team last year and just completed your right flight program. That's pretty cool. I saw a lot of pictures of that. That looked great. And you flew a plane with the rest of your class 2 weeks ago. How was that experience?
It was really cool. I got to fly in the same plane at the same time as my best friend, which was really cool.
That's great. What a great memory. What, can you lead us in the pledge?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put the flag up, and then whenever you're ready, go ahead and start.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Thank you so much, Madison. Enjoy the rest of your 5th grade there at Soling Tom.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Have a great night.
You too.
Thank you. Okay. So, Dr. Trujillo, agenda adjustments. Do you have any? Yes, we've got 3 agenda adjustments. No, your mic's not on.
Halva, members of the board, good evening. We've got 3 agenda adjustments. Want to move these up to the top of the agenda when folks have the most energy. Item 9.2, we'd like immediately following call to the audience, as well as items 8.1 and 8.2.
So 9.2, 8.1, then 8.2.
That's correct.
Okay. Board members, any objections to that? Okay, so we'll go ahead and move those items. And now we're on awards and recognition. ¿Hay alguien que necesita los servicios de un intérprete? Aquí tenemos a alguien que te puede asistir. Ok, todavía no, Luis.
President Grijalva, members of the governing board, members of the general public, the viewing public, TUSD community, welcome to our last governing board meeting in the month of November. Certainly hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving and holiday break. And today we get to kick things off with our favorite part of our board meetings, celebration of excellence, students and staff. And our first recognition tonight is a young person from Tucson High, and Natalie Salvador. She was the AZ-ALAS, that is the Arizona Association for Latino Administrators and Superintendents Organization. She was their selected winner in Mes de la Cultura art contest that they facilitated. Congratulations to Natalie from Tucson High. She is a Badger for winning the Mes de la Cultura art contest that was organized by AZ-ALAS. And we thank them for their generous recognition of Natalie's work. And there you can see Natalie's beautiful work there. She's a freshman at Tucson High. Our next recognition is for the Pister Panther Middle School basketball team for winning the boys basketball championship. The champs are back. They captured the middle school championship crown for the boys division. And thank you very, very much to our coaching staff and our community out there at Pister. When we get back, we certainly are going to have our team in for some more formal presentation and pictures and all the like, but we wanted to give the breaking news to our community and our board about the champs. Give them a round of applause, yes. And over at McCorkle, we've got champs in volleyball. I want to congratulate the McCorkle Academy of Excellence K-8 girls volleyball champions. And congratulations to our wonderful athletes and our team out at McCorkle for their victory. They make us all proud. Let's give them a round of applause as well. And we will certainly have them in as well when we get back from the break for more formal pictures and recognition. And our next recognition is to a very, very special alumni and NFL player, Levi Wallace, whose foundation provided some wonderful opportunities to the students of Booth Pickett K-8. On Saturday, November 19th at Booth Pickett, the Levi Wallace Foundation partnered with our African American Student Services Department to support families in need by providing $100 gift cards to the first 100 families that stop by to pick up a full Thanksgiving meal, complete with an entire turkey. Thank you to the Levi Wallace Foundation and everybody who donated to help our TUSD families have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. And our last recognition of the evening goes to Concentric, Arizona Department of Health Services, and the Pima County Health Department for bringing the COVID test kit giveaway to TUSD over the last few weeks. Thousands of TUSD families and staff have been able to stock up on free COVID tests ahead of the holidays. Tests were distributed at all of the Family Resource Centers and through our schools and office buildings. Thank you to Concentric, the Arizona Department of Health Services, and the Pima County Health Department for providing our district with 200,000 COVID test kits to give to our community. If you are unable to pick up kits or need more, you may go to any one of our Family Resource Centers or contact your school health office to pick them up. We can provide 2 tests per family member. And Governing Board President Grijalva, members of the board, that concludes the awards and recognitions for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Now we're on board member activity reports. Board members? Yes, Ms. Luna Rose.
Thank you, President Grijalva. And good evening, everybody, and I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving break. This is kind of a lengthy list because it's been a minute since we've been able to do any board member reports. So I just want to kind of go back to October, the last couple of days before Halloween. I did a fun door judging at BRICTA, and every single door I voted for. So I don't think anybody won, well, at least with my votes. The teachers did a wonderful job at the different, the babies and the 2- and 3-year-olds and the 5-year-olds. It was wonderful. And everybody's never been to BRICTA or Shoemaker, please go check out our facilities. They're wonderful, and we have a great staff there. Same day, I did attend the Educational Enrichment Foundation Luncheon, and along with Dr. Ravi and Ms. Grijalva, and it was the first time that I've attended that luncheon, and it was very nice. It was the TCC, a lot of people who support our students and our district, so thank you to all who came to that. And then just a few personal things. It was my 30th high school reunion. I'm dating myself. Rincon High, class of 92, woo-woo. We had a 30th reunion. Councilman Paul Cunningham is my class, so he put that together. And we had a nice dinner session at the Viscount, and some of us went over to the football game, and some of us didn't. So, but it was a good time, and it was nice to reconnect. We had a few teachers who did show up. And then the very next day, I did attend the Rincon Foundation breakfast with Dr. Trujillo. I am the first Rincon alumni to be on the governing board. So I knew about the foundation, but did not know exactly what it went into. And if your school has a foundation or something like that, I would highly suggest going to their meetings or supporting them in any way you can, because it's a nice way to reconnect as an alumni to your school, to your former school, and with former classmates. And thank to my former high school chemistry teacher, Mr. Hank Matz, who's a very involved and kind of pushing me to also join the foundation. So thank you to him. I did also want to mention we have a membership to the National Association of Latino Elected Officials, otherwise known as NALEO, and I attended their conference in Washington, D.C. a couple weeks ago. All expenses paid, so no district funding came for that conference. But I met with other school board members from Arizona, first-time elected officials. They normally do these trainings. It's a boot camp for new elected officials, but it couldn't do it in 2020 because of COVID. So they invited me to come for this training a couple weeks ago, and I connected with other school board members in Arizona. I was the only one from Tucson, but we all have a lot of the same issues. So it was nice to connect, and now it's nice to have those connections, those networking, and the counterparts that can understand what's going on here. So today, I did get to go to fun things, and these are the last two items. I went to Tully Magnet Elementary, and I was interviewed for their AV club. They do a morning show. And so I got to be interviewed today, and they chose me because they like my last name. So thank you to Mr. Goretta and Mr. Wilkin, the principal, and the kids, Jimmy, who interviewed me and has asked me some great questions on why did I join the school board, and why do I love the district, and why do I love Tucson. So I hope I gave good questions, and I do believe it comes out in the next week. So, and they do post that to their Facebook page. And I wanted to make one mention. I did this morning have breakfast with a former teacher of mine from Rincon High School, Mr. Bill Broyles. And the reason why I wanted to mention it to the audience was because Mr. Broyles was probably my favorite teacher at Rincon, and I loved him. And he was the GATE teacher, and I was in GATE, and he really drilled us on what to do, how to be, how to write. And speaking with him today, he was still kind of doing that across the table in a very kind way. But it's just a reminder about what teachers can do and how they can support and how can they inspire. He inspired me. I'm a better writer and a better speaker because of him. And so I wanted to mention him today and thank him publicly for all he did for not just me, but my other classmates at Rincon. He retired in 1998, but he's still very active in the foundation because he too is a Rincon alumni. But just a reminder, and if for other alumni here, whether it's TUSD or another district, if there's a teacher that you can still talk to, they want to hear from you. They want to see what happens to their older students and how they've moved on. So just wanted to give a shout out to him and all the other teachers and how much I love what they do. So thank you.
Thank you, Luna Rose. Dr. Ravi.
Well, thank you, President Grijalva. So busy month as well since the last board report. Also joined Ms. Luna Rose at the EEF luncheon on October 28th, where they honored our board president, President Grijalva, for her 20 years of service to TUSD. So it was great to see you there and see you being honored there. And I think they raised over $170,000 for TUSD students and programs, which was amazing. So great job, EEF, and everyone who participated. Since the last board report, I've been able to attend 2 budget advisory committee meetings. So we've had really busy agendas looking at literacy, as well as the ESSER funded positions to really figure out how we can continue supporting the district in a post-ESSER world. So really great conversations with an amazing committee. I had a chance to go to Palo Verde High School and see Ruby Bridges, one of the first African-American students to attend an integrated public school in New Orleans. And was able to bring my older daughter with me to experience that as well. And so we really appreciated hearing her story being told. And I had a chance to visit 3 sites as tours and learn about this programming and services there. I went to Gale Elementary School, and thank you, Principal Kathy Asoyo, for the tour, and loved seeing all the holiday artwork up and learning about the support services for students. Go Tigers. And also had a chance to visit Dodge Traditional Magnet School. Thank you, Brenda Menegwin and Natasha Arvayo, principal and dean of the school, where I got to see a lot about the culture and community, electives and programs available for the students there. That was a really great experience. Go Bulldogs. And then finally had a chance to head to Southwest Tucson for Valencia Middle School, where Principal Stacy Gist gave me a tour and showed me a lot of the programs like AVID and all the sports programs, music, and so many other things that are available to the over 800 students that are going to Valencia Middle School. So go Jaguars, and a great experience over there.
Thank you. Board Member Shaw?
Thank you. I had the opportunity to visit Utterback Middle School and got a tour of the campus from Ms. Sanders. Really excited about all the things happening at Utterback. It's one of our fine arts middle schools, so if you're not aware of it, please check it out because they have a lot to offer. The theater was just incredible, and yeah, they have so many dance things, and just if you're into the fine arts, I would check out Utterback for sure. I also moseyed on over to Cavett Elementary and got a tour from Ms. Leeson. That was also nice. And I was invited over to McGee Middle School last week. They celebrated their 3-letter grade jump. And so we all went out to the field and formed a B. And then a drone came over the top and like took a picture, I guess. So that was really fun. Everyone was very proud of that advancement. It was the only school in TUSD to have a 3-letter grade advancement. So kudos to McGee staff and students. And also just so honored to attend the fireside chat with Miss Ruby Bridges at Palo Verde with my daughter. We were both so moved by her words, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what she experienced that, you know, we all know the story, but there was a lot that like is not well known. And I just want to thank African American Student Services and the African American Museum of Southern Arizona for bringing that to TUSD. Thank you.
Thank you. I was able to get a tour of Utterback Middle School with Higher Ground and some of the, just talking about some of the services that they're offering there at Utterback with Higher Ground as partners. I thought that was great. I was at the EEF luncheon. I attended Stories That Soar with Dr. Trujillo at Sam Hughes. I was invited by Representative Cano, and that was really great to see so many young people so excited about their stories being kind of acted out in front of everyone. I was at the Encuentro at Pueblo High School. It's sort of like a resource fair, and many of the TUSD departments were there. That was really great, and they had a lot of the high school students there were entertainment, so it was really cool. Wakefield started a leadership academy, so I spoke to a group of students there. I attended with Ms. Shaw and Dr. Ravi. We were all there at the Ruby Bridges event, and I just kind of think back periodically on some of the things that she said, and I've heard myself telling some of the same stories like over and over and over again. So I know that that is going to be something that I will remember for the rest of my life. I attended VC's B rating celebration where we all went out and there was a lot of cheering and fun stuff. And then I was interviewed by Bill Buckmaster, and it's my last show with him as a member of the TUSD board. So that was kind of nice. Had a moment to reflect on the last 20 years. That was fun. Okay. All right. Now we are on to call to the audience. And ¿hay alguien que necesita los servicios de un intérprete? Puede ser que no. Yeah. Okay. Muchas gracias por estar aquí. All right. I'll turn it over to Clerk Luna Rose.
Okay. Thank you, President Grijalva. Once again, good evening, and thank you for joining us. Members of the public may speak during the call to the audience portion of the agenda. The governing board president shall be responsible for recognizing speakers and for maintaining proper order by setting such limitations as it may be appropriate. For those who want to speak in person or have their comments read, may email or call the board office or may complete a request to address the board form at any time before the close of the call of the audience. The speaker must state their full name and topic prior to addressing the board. Speakers are encouraged to be brief with a maximum time of 3 minutes. If there are documents for the board, please give them to the board office staff and they will ensure each board member receives a copy. Those attending the meeting and or speaking before the board shall observe rules of propriety, decorum, and good conduct. Speakers shall refrain from impertinent or slanderous remarks. And because Tucson Unified serves students from preschool to high school, speakers should be aware that there may be children present. At the conclusion of the call to the audience, the governing board president will ask if individual board members wish to respond to those who have addressed the board, wish to ask staff to review a matter, or wish to ask that a matter be put forth on a future agenda. No more than 2 board members may address each topic. First person this evening is Regina McLaren.
Presuming this is on? Okay. Good evening. My name is Regina McLaren. I am a parent of a senior at Cole, which is the Catalina Online Learning Environment. I am also a member of the Site Council for Cole. What I wish to discuss today is the current drop policy that has been enacted at Cole sometime at the beginning of October. End of September, beginning of October, sometime around there. When the school year started, it was a 30-day calendar day drop period, drop policy, where if the student didn't log into their lessons online, they would be dropped after X number of days. That policy was dropped down to 10 days. No notification was given to the parents. No notification was given to the students. The teachers barely knew about it. It's not even on the Cole website. The issue I have with this drop period is trying to get that to. The issue I have with this drop period is it's not feasible for an online school. I can fully understand why that would be the case for the TUSD, your normal brick and mortar TUSD schools. If you're not seeing my son's pretty green eyes for 10 days, sure, drop him. This is an online school though. Yes, he has the capability to go to Catalina High, to the computer lab, but it's not necessary. He basically hasn't been since, I think, February of 2020. And now he's a senior, and just Sunday, I received notification that he'd been dropped from 5 of his 6 classes. And the principal, Mr. Beck, gave me a call yesterday morning and said he had personally re-enrolled my son. But we shouldn't have to be doing that. It shouldn't be a 10-day drop because it's a 10 calendar day. Well, in the last 10 calendar days, there was only, 5 school days? We prefer a 30 calendar day drop policy. I'm sorry, I lose my words. A 30 calendar day drop policy that is much more feasible and have the teachers of the students be involved in that, not have some algorithm, some computer, because my son also has a 504 plan that gives him some extra things because he's autistic and he has ADHD. And that's falling through the cracks with this drop policy. The first thing he said to me last year was, "Mom, I'm being set up for failure." And I think my time's done. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
It's not necessary to clap. Thank you.
Dale McLaren, our next speaker.
Should be faster. There. Hello and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dale Eugene McLaren II, a senior at the Catalina Online Learning Experience, here to talk about the Clever program and, more importantly, the drop policy, obviously. Now, the old program was Ingenuity. Ingenuity was good because it could keep students like me, who would get distracted extremely easily, on task. There was most importantly, a parent login. They could log on at any time, at any moment, and see down to the second how much the student has worked, how many assignments they've done, that kind of thing. That also offered a rewarding experience, as I could blow through 100 lessons and feel very proud that I blew through 100 lessons. That's not the case with Clever. Clever does not have any form of login outside of teacher and student, and the only way my mother can get into and see how I've done on my courses is to knock me out by using my login. Now, the withdrawal policy, as was explained before, is frankly terrible. However, the other issue with it is it destroys a personalized learning experience. Now, if you know anything about people, it's that the more you personalize the experience, the more effective it's going to be. It does not personalize it. And now let's hammer in a bit that the drop policy was not done with any notification to anybody. There was no notification to parents, teachers, or students. This is unprofessional. Such a big change should be put in with full emails sent to everybody. Not just, oh, by the way, we're putting it in now. And the student experience for Clever as a whole feels off. First of all, I have noticed multiple problems that are wrong, just plain wrong with Clever, that have the wrong answers, as well as the fact that it does not feel rewarding in any way, shape, or form. It feels like it's made by a robot, and honestly, it might be. I believe that my time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. Okay, next to be read from Annette Corrales.
Hi, I've submitted an electronic request to request Warren be part of the Region 1 K-6 study for next school year. I am a parent of a 5th grade and would love to know why Warren was not included in the Region 1 survey. As a parent, I'm looking for a middle school for our 5th grade, and unfortunately, I'm looking to leave TUSD as our region does not offer a K-6. I would like to have this request read on my behalf at tomorrow's board meeting. Annette Corrales.
Okay, thank you. Next, Melissa Conroy.
At the end of October, the CDC voted 15-0 to add COVID shots to the vaccine schedules for kids. By adding the shots to the schedule, the CDC is securing Pfizer and Moderna's permanent liability shield so that no one can sue them for damages or for the injuries and the deaths occurring as the result of the shots. This move would not automatically make the vaccines mandatory for children. As we all know, the CDC guidance is optional, but many cities and states will be inclined to require whatever the CDC recommends. During the pandemic, cities and states controlled by Democrat political figures frequently rubber stamped CDC's recommendations relating to masks, social distancing, and lockdowns. Frustrated parents would ask their local officials about timelines for getting rid of mask mandates and reopening schools. Their answer was usually something like, well, when the CDC says so. This means that adding the COVID vaccine to the childhood schedule will create a tremendous incentive for states to require it for public school children. This would be a profound mistake. COVID vaccines have failed to prevent the spread of infection. Most children are spared the worst effects of COVID anyway, particularly if they were already infected, which is the case for nearly 9 out of every 10 kids, according to the CDC's actual own data. And the side effects for the shots are disastrous for things like myocarditis, pericarditis, and blood clots, which actually is killing people. In the US, less than 40% of kids under the age of 11 have received the vaccine. Obviously, most parents have decided that this course of action is not necessary for their children. 92% of Americans are now saying no more to this vaccine. In the past, a child would get 3 vaccines. Today, a child gets around 72 injections. People are starting to question the whole aggressive vaccination schedule. More and more parents say that they have lost all faith in vaccines overall. After 2+ years, we all know that COVID was a statistical hoax. Masks never worked, the vax doesn't work, 6 feet apart didn't work, closing businesses didn't work, none of it worked. Do you know what did work? Zinc, vitamin C, and vitamin D. Those do provide protection against COVID. And all the doctors who said it were highly censored and maligned. Keep the vax away from our kids. Nuremberg 2.0 has already started in other countries. Do you want to be held liable? Because I'm telling you, it's coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is Lillian Fox.
I got a lot more than 3 childhood vaccinations. You should each have one of these. I hope you've got it in front of you because it's horrible to talk about numbers when you can't see the silly things. This is from presentation 7 or agenda item 7.1 from the last board meeting. I complained about how incredibly poor TUSD's results were and said that the superintendent needed to appear before you every month to explain what was being done to improve educational outcomes in the district. He read off the state numbers and talked about how horrible the state numbers are. The state numbers are horrible. They're embarrassing. You know, this on average, the state percentage of kids who are proficient is not good. TUSD is far worse. He proceeded to talk about how bad the state numbers were and said he was not going to meddle with success. TUSD was doing well. As you can see, that's not the truth. I'm just going to talk about the 8th grade test scores because it would be too boring to read out all of them. The numbers for 2021 and 2022 TUSD's numbers compared to the state are not any different than the pre-COVID numbers. We have had very poor educational outcomes for a long time. The problem is not that we're a minority district, because every one of our ethnic groups, white, Mexican American, African American, Native American, underperforms compared to their ethnic average results for their ethnic group in the state. We have a serious problem that we need to do more to correct. Now, if you look at the 8th graders in 2021, only 32% on average in the state tested proficient. TUSD, only 17%. So in other words, we were less than half as good as the state. If you look at the next year, the state number was 43% of the 8th graders tested proficient in English language arts, but in TUSD it was only 26%. That's horrible. That means we're sending kids off to high school who can't read and can't write at an 8th grade level. How are they going to pass high school? Because the subjects I taught, I got a huge number of kids who couldn't read. It's a tragedy when you have high school students who can't read. If you look at TUSD numbers, it's almost like the longer a kid stays in TUSD, the less proficient they become. They're not keeping up with their grade level. They're falling further and further behind grade level wise. It's not that they're forgetting how to read or write or do math. It's they're not progressing at the level they should progress. When you look at math, it's even worse. The state was horrible for math in 2021. Only 26% of kids tested proficient in math. But in TUSD, it was only 9% of the 8th graders tested as proficient. If you look at 2022, TUSD improved a little bit. We had 12% of
Your
our
time
eighth
has
graders
expired.
testing
Ms.
proficient.
Fox, thank you.
you.
Next is Stephanie Kirk.
Evening, my name is Stephanie Kirk. I found it interesting that people set up here speaking about Ruby Bridges with what she stands for. Did not each one of you vote to put a mask and maybe a needle in an arm? I've noticed that when some people get up here, you guys just let them go and go. But when I get up here, not so much, huh? Adelita, is that a soda? Sorry to see you go. I'm sorry to see you go, but I'm happy to see you on the health department board. In the past, I've spoken about 18-year-old Chloe Cole, who is self-described former trans kid who detransitioned after undergoing years of puberty blockers and an irreversible double mastectomy at the age of 15. Cole is now traveling across the country to share her story and raise alarm about her gender transition procedures on children, a growing trend she calls child abuse and medical experimentation. Published in the JAMBA Pediatrics, researchers from the Vanderbilt University in Nashville state that the number of transgender youth has doubled in the last 5 years. Children mastectomies are up 389%. Meanwhile, the percentages of adults who identify as transgender have remained steady at 0.6 since its last report in 2017. Where do those surgery statistics sit today as the government offers to use taxpayer funds to flip the bill to disfigure your child? Imagine the uptick in confusion in gender ideology if all the school boards encourage drag shows put together by teachers who are being investigated for sexual relationships with their students, like what happened here at the TUSD schools. Representative Jason Zachary identified the danger behind these surgeries and announced that Vanderbilt University Medical Center agreed to pause the gender surgeries on minors after backlash from the public. Is this confusion a direct result of the radical woke agenda being forced on our children by Big Pharma, mainstream media, Biden, and this TUSD board? Could the reason for the jump in statistics be because we, the parents, didn't know about the CDC's youth risk behavior survey that was being given to our high school students in 2017 to ask them if they were transgender? Could this introduction create a greater awareness at a time where our children's minds are more malleable? Could the rapidly growing adolescent gender confusion be due to the chemicals in our water like atrazine, where studies indicate the environment has been shown to cause that male frogs lay eggs? Have you ever considered a hormonal side effect from consuming birth control at an adolescent, and how consumption contributes to low fertility, bone density, and even gender confusion? Already we know that the COVID injections didn't stop the transmission, and while we know they induce pericarditis and myocarditis in both children and adults, we do not know if this mystery
Thank you. Your time is up.
Okay, and next speaker, Brianna Chilius.
Don't.
Dear Superintendent Dr. Trujillo, President Grijalva, and members of the governing board, I want to take this opportunity to always, as always, thank you for listening to my concerns around library materials, the status of the school libraries, and the current existing school libraries staff themselves that are diligently working hard to maintain and sustain these spaces, both physically and intellectually, in the district. So as a former school district employee and now turned community partner, I do immensely appreciate it. With that said, I would like to add my own commentary to the public review over the revision of policy IJL and the governing board's policy, which will be discussed later on in tonight's meeting, heading on agenda item 7.4. So after reading over the details of the original House Bill 2439, details in the revised policy, in addition to some of the comments and suggestions made by the community members of the public review, I do share some heightened concerns in how this revised policy will affect students and their ability and confidence of checking out books at their school libraries. I do want to iterate that they do have a right to practice and express their intellectual freedoms. That even includes the students. I would love to learn what the district plans to do about the near non-existence of state-certified full-time library media specialists / teacher librarians that are and will be evidently needed now more than ever to voice how problematic this revised policy will be for the students. This policy specifically will yield potentially dangerous infringements upon a student reader's privacy and the close brush to censorship of library materials present within our school libraries. The majority of the schools across the district does not, I repeat, do not have full-time teacher librarians. So I'm curious to know what will the process entail from this revision. Lastly, I would like to learn about the school community partnership that was initiated back in October of 2019, and if it'll start up again. I do know that it did shut down when the pandemic started. However, from that entity, it was brought to attention that the school library restoration project was going to come to fruition from that within the district to reinstate or in-state teacher librarians. So if we can learn more about this from the governing board staff, I'd greatly appreciate it. So as always, thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Okay, so President Grijalva, that ends our call to the audience this evening.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and close the call to the audience and ask, this is the time that board members can ask staff to review a matter, ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. And so and also for some clarification, and so what I would like to request is I would like to thank Ms. Regina McKellen for coming and identifying the change in policy that you were not notified about, and if I could ask staff to share with the board when that policy change happened and didn't have anything to do with the COLE programs going to Clever. And I also want to thank Daniel for coming and speaking. We always really appreciate hearing from students. Any other? Okay. Ms. Clerk Luna Rose, then Ms. Shaw, and then Dr. Ravi.
Okay, and I'm going to piggyback off Ms. Grijalva. Thank you, the McLarens, for coming. We really do appreciate you, and we always appreciate from hearing from students. So Dale, thank you so much for giving us your time this evening. I do want to, my follow-up to that is his mother did mention that he has a 504. So I want to make sure that any of our other students that are in that program and have either IEPs or 504s are not being neglected. So if we can look into that and you can let the board know, Dr. Trujillo, I think that would be appreciated.
Thank you. Michelle?
Thank you. Also, I would like to thank the McLarens. Thank you so much for being here. I think it's really important to hear from parents and students, especially, about our alternative programs, how they're doing, how they've changed over the years, and what we can do to improve them. So, if you have any more suggestions, please feel free to email me or anyone on the board, and we'll send them over to the administration at Cole to try to get them rectified. Let's see. Also, in regards to Ms. Corrales' letter, I'm interested to see why Warren was not included in the regional survey. If we could reach back out to her and try to rectify that. Also, I think Ms. Fox brought up a good point, very good point, about our test scores, and we have to be proactive about raising these scores up. If you look at, this is from our last meeting, but pretty much after like third or fourth grade, the proficiency rates start to drop. And so if we could really focus our interventions on middle school and elementary school, we need to do that. And I really like your idea, Lillian, about getting a monthly report from Dr. Trujillo about what we're doing in our district to bring up those scores. Dr. Trujillo, if you could keep us abreast of that at each meeting that we have. I know there's a lot of schools in the district, but if we focus on, a few at a time, we can at least one day get these scores up to the point where we're extremely proud of them. And Thank you, Ms. Chilius, for your advocacy again. I definitely have similar questions to you about what this policy, what we're going to do about it, and the full-time media specialist, which is kind of the caveat to enacting that policy. And so I'll definitely ask that during the agenda item. Thank you.
Dr. Rabi.
Thank you, President Grijalva. I just wanted to take the opportunity while we have both the largest audience in person as well as virtually listening tonight, just to address the health and vaccine misinformation that was spoken tonight. Some of you probably know that I'm a family physician here in our community, and I've seen probably nearly 1,000 of our fellow Tucsonans in my clinical practice this fall, including scores of patients who are just miserably sick from COVID, flu, RSV. I diagnosed my first October RSV in my 20-year career in medicine this year. And just today, had 3 patients who tested positive for flu A. And a lot of them, one of them had to get IV fluids, a lot of them are just miserable. And the common theme is not being vaccinated for COVID, not being boosted, not getting the flu vaccine. The vaccines are safe, they are effective, and I encourage everyone listening tonight to please get boosted for COVID. Please get your flu vaccine. They save lives, they help prevent illness, they help prevent complications of illness, they help prevent severity of illness. And I have seen week after week this fall just the consequences of the lack of vaccination in our community. So I really strongly encourage everyone listening to please get yourself and your kids vaccinated as soon as possible.
Thank you, Dr. Rabi. Okay, now we're going to move on to, I'm sorry, Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, President Grijalva, members of the governing board. We always welcome any comments from the public regarding student achievement in the district, but we always want to make sure that all of the information pertinent to student achievement in the district is a part of the public record. So when looking at scores for the 2021 school year, it's important to note that only 56% of the entire district tested. That was a year that AZ Merit was voluntary. So we had almost half the district not even taking the test, and you see those results in ELA 2021 and Math 2021. It's also important to note that when the lockdown happened in March of 2020, it took our team, though they did a wonderful job, it took our team almost 6 full months to order, invoice, receive, image, prepare, deliver, and deploy 30,000 laptops across the district. So we had thousands of students across the district at the beginning of 2021 not even having access to online instruction when it was offered in other parts of the district for several months until we could finally get them online. Additionally, in 2021, we had historically high rates of absenteeism due to COVID-19 infection, sub shortages, and the related teacher shortage issue. I also want to note that if we're talking about TUSD's comparison to the state, the arrows are appropriate on the graphic that we received because we significantly outperformed the state with regard to bounce back from COVID-19, especially when you look at math, when we outpaced the state significantly in 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And I think that I've been very public in my statements that growth is good, but we are not done by a long shot. We have a long way to go for proficiency, and that will continue to be our focus. Proficiency is the aim for all of our students, but we need to take time out to celebrate the growth and the hard work of our teachers through these 2 very, very difficult school years.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Okay, so now we are moving on to 9.2, which is grade reconfiguration plan proposed K6 conversions for school year 24-25. And this is a study information item. Thank you.
Yes, President Grijalva, members of the governing board, I'd like to welcome Mr. Bryant Nodine to the podium. And we want to put out in the public space for the first time some work we've been doing with 6 school communities regarding the opportunity that they may have to expand by 1 grade level and offer their current 5th graders a potential 6th grade. Mr. Nodine.
Thank you. President Grijalva, members of the board, Dr. Trujillo. Barry, can you go to the next slide? Thanks. Okay, so the objective of this one is 2-pronged. We want to improve academic performance, particularly at the middle schools, and we want to attract students from both inside and outside the district. And it's part of a multi-pronged approach that couples instructional enhancements with improved recruitment and online learning programs. Three things listed here are some of the key ones. First of all, we want to prepare sixth graders for departmentalized instruction while they're in a comfortable, familiar setting. We want to make sure that, well, in any transition, you lose students. And what we're trying to do is reduce that loss of students that we get from the 5th to the 6th grade and figure out a better way to handle that transition to avoid that loss. And then the other part of it is, and the research will support this that I'll show you, we want to create smaller school communities, but not so small that they can't provide the support and the full educational experience that we need. So, what does the research have to say? Dr. Freitas has done a lot of research, particularly as it relates to K-8s. She's done literature research as it relates to K-8s versus middle schools. And I won't go through all of it. Some of it is in the report that I sent you. But basically, the difference is K-8s meet the social and emotional needs of students and allow them to develop in a supportive environment with guidance, mentoring, and so on. And they have more personal relationships during this period, and that period is a really dynamic period in their lives. And then the second part of it is middle schools are generally larger, more efficient, and they tend to meet not the students' needs as much as the district's needs because they're more efficient and cost-effective. And another thing in the research is that a key variable is size. But success comes from the fact not just that the K-8s are smaller, but they also tend toward a more nurturing, supportive environment versus an environment of you've got to learn to follow rules and be self-sufficient. So those are some of the key parts of the research. There are other factors. One of the things we wanted to look at was, could you go on? I'm sorry, skip one more slide. Okay. We also wanted to look at where we were losing students. And this is a map of attendance or capture rates, which are the percentage of students in TUSD by grade level, and this is middle school, so grades 6 through 8, versus the total school-age population that would be in those grade levels. So what you can see there is our capture rates run from 25%, less than 25% actually in some areas, and that's the lighter blue, to over 85%. And this, when you look at it, is affected primarily by other districts, so it's areas on the periphery of the district, and by charter schools. So the lighter blue, the lower the capture rates. And you can see that the lighter blue areas are in the northwest, north, and northeast primarily. And here's, next slide, please. I keep thinking I'm doing it myself. So this is the, could you go back one? There you go. This is a map of the charter schools, and you can see that they kind of parallel where the lower capture rates are. The other thing that's interesting about this one is the number and the size of K-8 schools. So that's been a successful model in the charter schools. So what we're trying to do here is provide a similar educational experience to some of our competition and some of our successful competition in existing TUSD schools without going to the extent of the renovations and changes, additions to capacity and so on that are needed to go to a K-8 model, because those can be fairly extensive. We planned on doing this in phases, picking the best options to evaluate first for success, and also to work out any kinks by trying out some of the schools first. The next slide, please, Barry. So this is the selection criteria that we used, and we picked the best options using these criteria. First of all, capacity. Does the school have capacity? If it doesn't, we didn't even consider it. What's the size of the 6th grades? Ideally, you want 2 to 3 classes of 6 grades because then you get that ability to team teach, have a math science, and have an English language arts, social studies team that can take one class and another so they start to get that feeling of departmentalized instruction. We looked at parental preference, and we used in the beginning the 2019 survey that we did for parents' interest in going to the K-6 model. We looked at areas that would, where we could potentially retain students. So that's those areas where we're losing a lot of students. And what we did to do that is we looked at the 5th to 6th grade transitions over a number of years. Where do we lose the students in those transitions? And then we looked at middle school size. We wanted to create smaller middle schools, but we didn't want to take small middle schools and make them even smaller. So we were looking at some of the bigger middle schools to start with. And then we looked at cost. And initially, we looked at primarily the FTEs, but we also looked at what schools had furnishings, what schools had technology, and so on. So what we came up with is this map of the K-6 options. And we started with 11 schools. We went to all of those schools. We toured them with the principal. We discussed the option and how they would make it work in their school. Then we ended up eliminating the ones that are the 5 dash circles because for a number of reasons. One was questionable capacity, new development coming in. Another one was timing, programs that already just come into the school and they were concerned about accepting new programs while they were trying to get those programs to work. Lack of interest in general in doing it, or the need to develop, in the Northeast in particular, a 6 to 7 transition strategy so we're not just retaining kids for the 6th grade. And so what we ended up with were 6 that we thought would work really well for phase 1, and that's the solid green circles. And there, the school has capacity, there's a good potential for capturing students, and we have very supportive leadership in the school. So the next thing we did was looking at just those 6 schools, because we didn't want to raise expectations in parents. We wanted to only survey the schools where we thought there was a good potential to go to the 6th grade. We surveyed 3rd through 5th graders in those schools. Overall, 76% of the parents surveyed supported the K-6 option. K-8 was next with 16% and middle school 7%. And then there were some that just said, we're not going to go to TUSD. So let's take a look at that table. At that table, that's the percent. The first column is the school. The second one is the percent who is going to stay in TUSD anyway, regardless of whether we change it or not in the current situation. Okay, so that's 81% overall. The second column is the percent that would stay with the K-6. So there's an increase of 10% that would stay. And in particular, where we have a significant change is in Soling Tom, where there's an increase from 70% to 94% who would stay. And I want to make a point here again. The objective of this is not just retention. The objective of this is to look at how we can improve academics, make a better transition into the middle schools, and make schools more attractive for parents. So the next step was to look at the impacts from the school. So let me describe the table. The table is feeder schools into a middle school. The middle schools are in bold, and the feeder schools, which are the 6 that were selected, are below that. The scores are the scores that they met with our criteria. And then it shows enrollment, 2022, current enrollment, projected for next year without the 6th grade in them, or with the 6th grade in them if they're an elementary school. And then the 2023 sixth grade so that you can see that in particular. And so, oh, and then the last one is estimated retention. And you can see Soling Tom has the highest level of students that would remain in TUSD because of the change. So what do we have? We have elementary schools that are running with 2 to 3 classes per grade. And that's really what we're looking for. It'll be tight at Steele because it's down to 34 and Davidson as well. So it will depend on how many parents actually choose that option. And then in terms of the middle schools, Gridley would lose about 30 students, Valencia about 40, and then Doolin and McGee 5 to 15. Very small changes there. And we really didn't want to impact McGee much in this iteration of this. And in terms of diversity, we always look at that, and you'll get if you want to move forward with this, you'll get a performance impact analysis, but there's very little effect on diversity. The greatest change was about 2% in one ethnic category. We also contacted departments to determine if they would be affected by this change. Fine arts, family and community engagement, culturally responsive pedagogy, exceptional education, interscholastic advanced learning, human resources, transportation, and technology. Really, most of them there was no impact. The ones that were the biggest concern were interscholastics. How do we create a sports program for sixth graders in an elementary school who can't participate with K through 5? Because that's our current policy right now. So we'd have to look at, first of all, the parent could choose to go to a middle school if sports is the more important thing. Secondly, we'd have to look at, is there an opportunity at the school for a coach or for clubs? Are there clubs in the area that would support those sports? The other things, human resources, we are going to need to recruit some teachers. The report that I gave you shows that in most cases, we can transfer the teachers from Gridley and Valencia because right now they have an excess of staff relative to their enrollment. But in Whitmore and Davidson, we would need to add some teachers. And then the only other one is advanced learning and fine arts. They were excited about the program. They felt that they could really participate to add electives, and that's one of the key things we need to look at in the future is how we add elective opportunities for the sixth graders in the elementary schools. So the next steps that we have to take are well, first of all, the structure is there already. What we've done, the schools are there. We're confident we can get the teachers in the classrooms. So that part of it is there. The technology is there, needs to be installed, but we have it in place. There is engagement and there's will with the schools that we've picked and with the parents in those schools to make this transition, to make this change. The next step is how do we do it? You know, how is it going to function? I know the teachers are already, the principals are already really thinking about this because when we toured, they were telling me how they thought it could work, okay? But we need to figure out a way to do it in a standardized manner, okay? Do it in a way that we know the outcome is going to be good throughout. So that's one of the things that we need to work on, the function and how it will work. And with that, I'd like to open it up for discussion. Questions? Or Dr. Trujillo, did you?
Go ahead, Dr. Trujillo.
Yeah, I would like to say that just a couple of points. Number one, we're not talking about the entire district. We're talking about 6 schools where we've seen a tremendous amount of will and excitement to want to do this. This doesn't touch any of our standalone middle schools. That's a bigger project that I think is going to necessitate a little more time. But what this does do is give us a glimpse, at least in a small way, in 6 different school communities where the buy-in is there and the want is there on what it could look like, to go to a K-6. I think a small pilot like this would give us an opportunity to see if some of the research around K-8s holds up, how it compares to a K-6. And when looking at these schools and we see the spatial capacity, we know that this is probably the lowest cost options for us. They've already got the classrooms. And I think our enrollment loss is already out there in the public space. It goes without saying that we sustain the bulk of our enrollment loss at our standalone middle schools. So we have our standalone middle schools, they've already got several, unfortunately, overages in staffing that would be subjected to a district-initiated transfer. This would give them a destination in terms of being able to staff it. For the most part, I understand talking about Davidson and maybe a few of those schools we may have to add, but the majority of staffing is kind of already there and would be taken care of through the existing DIT process.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Trujillo. I want to say, as a parent of a 6th grader, I would have loved for him to be able to stay at his elementary school. I also have specifically chosen middle schools that are smaller, and I think that this would help in that regard, where you have the opportunity to have smaller middle schools with more attention, smaller classes. I think that would make a big difference in the choices parents make on whether they're going to put their child at one school or the other. I encouraged a lot of parents that were thinking about a district outside of TUSD to look at some of our middle schools and specifically some of our smaller ones, and a large number enrolled their child because they liked that environment. It was smaller, and some of the other middle schools seem just bigger, and they have more opportunities. So there's pros and cons to having larger enrollment. You have more options for electives. I mean, there's all kinds of wonderful reasons why a traditional middle school works for a lot of students. But for those of us who just wanted to kind of give a smaller environment for a little while longer to our 6th graders, I would have welcomed the opportunity to at least have that option. Any other board members want to talk about this item? Okay, Board Member Shaw and then Dr. Ravi.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation, Mr. Nodine. Well, from the community, I've heard several different things. Many people really like this idea, many don't. And so reading the presentation, I'm a little bit concerned about the basically for the 6th graders, if this were to happen, who stay at their school. I don't feel like there's a plan on how to help them adjust once they're back into a middle school as 7th graders. I feel like, one, it will be difficult to adjust if they are at their elementary school, and then a middle school environment, as we all know, is its own. Well, yeah, it's a tough environment. Let's just say that, and I worry about the transition. And so, for this pilot program to be successful, I feel like we have to not only revise some of the schools to be K-6s, but we should also choose 1 or 2 middle schools to be 7th through 8th grade schools. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that the students who feed into that aren't they have an easier time to transition, because I feel like this idea is kind of it's for both elementary school students and middle school students. So to do it without modifying a middle school into a 7-8 would be a mistake.
Dr. Trujillo, go ahead. Okay, Dr. Ravi.
Thank you, President Grijalva. I think the overall concept I'm very much in favor of. I'll echo a lot of what you said, President Grijalva. As a parent of a 5th grader who is currently exploring middle school options for our oldest, and the daunting kind of the size of the schools and a lot of other things, I would very much wish that my daughter could have one more year at her elementary school, which we love so much. But also, wanted to make sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's on a lot of the logistics. I know you mentioned some of that, Mr. Nudin, about some of the logistics, both in the elementary school level as well as the middle school level. And, making sure the middle schools are sustainable, that we don't have any unintended consequences of what happens, after sixth grade, that we do have a way to make sure that the curriculum is robust in that sixth grade elementary school campus, so they're not missing out on some of the changes that happen going from elementary to middle school on the curriculum and academics front. So I think a lot of work has been started, which is awesome. I love the concept overall, and I think a lot of work needs to happen. I don't think we're looking to do anything overnight on these schools, and I can't remember in the presentation there was a timeline, but making sure that this is done over time so that we have enough time, not next school year, but in a school year where we're ready to really reconfigure these schools, reconfigure the middle schools, make sure all of our logistics are in place so that is done in a way that goes well, because if it doesn't go well, then we're going to lose parents and students and families, and we're going to be wishing that we spent more time on some of the logistics fronts.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Clerk Linda Rose, go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Grijalva. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Nudin. Appreciate it. As a student of this district, I went to Bonillas through sixth grade. And so I had wished that my daughter, who's now in Rincon, could have had that same experience at Sewell. And unfortunately for her, she starts sixth grade. 6 months later, she was at home for the next year and a half. So, we're seeing those losses, those academic losses, but we're trying to regain them. But my point being is that I think it works well. I remember feeling much better as a student going into Alice Vale as a seventh grader. I'm not sure. I think it also depends on maturity level, but I do know when I did take the tour of Alice Vale, they were very adamant, and I'm sure it's like that at our other middle schools, that the sixth grade's together, and they're downstairs, and then the upperclassmen, so to speak, are upstairs. And so there was still a division, just to make sure that we're acclimating these kids to the next step, which I think gets missed when we are doing that. I know that there's concern perhaps from some of the teachers at some of our schools right now, but if this is a pilot program and we can kind of see where this goes and take this slowly and carefully and not just run into it, I think it's worth I think it's worth looking into a little bit more and perhaps seeing how this goes before we make any big decisions.
I also, I was in the district as a middle schooler, and Wakefield was only a 7-8. All of the schools were through 6, and I wish I could say that we changed the grade reconfiguration for some really strong academic reason, but it was literally our elementary schools were very full, so we moved sixth grade into middle schools. And if we look at all of the enrollment losses of this district, the largest is in middle school. So if that can help keep some students in our district, that will be a really positive budget impact, but it also means that we're responding to parents who want that model. So I think it's important for us to give options to our families, and I would be in favor of moving forward with the pilot. I don't think all of our schools have the capacity. I mean, we just have some schools that are already at capacity with 5. K through 5, so they wouldn't be able to. But I do know a lot of parents, especially right now of fifth graders, that are like, I wish we could just keep them a little longer. Just because I think it builds confidence, and middle school is a really difficult time. You have a lot of changes going on with your body, and I think it would be nice to be able to continue to go to a familiar location with familiar people who care about you, that office manager you can always talk to, that kind of thing. So I would be in favor of moving in this direction. Dr. Trujillo.
I want to go back to Governing Board Member Shaw. I think she brings up a very important point, and I want to make sure that everybody knows we have assembled a committee and a team. We're working in partnership with TEA and Eli with some very, very well-experienced and talented middle school educators, both from the classroom teachers, and middle school administrators. And they're scouring the nation, looking at models, frameworks, that are effective in preparing sixth graders for the switch. And what we're talking about is a switch from self-contained instruction, where a student has the same teacher all day, same relationship, all subjects, same set of students, same set of relationships, to departmentalized, that is academically content-based. And you go from the switch of managing one relationship, all of a sudden you've got to manage six different adults, 6 different sets of expectations around grading and around attendance and behavior, and then you're dealing with environments that are 3 or 4 times the size of their original school. So we're looking at different frameworks that would prepare students in a K-6 environment with aspects of the switch like study skills, decision-making, organizational skills, good study habits. Those are the types of aspects of the transition we need to make sure that we can cover with students. We know that we just can't have 6th grade be the same. It just can't be another year of 5th grade. So we have a committee around this work. We also are slowing it down a little bit. I think the original vision was tackle more, do more, fold in some of the big standalone middle schools. I think we realize we're not really ready yet. We're not at that juncture. We also know that there's a talk about maybe some additional secondary options in some sectors of the district that we want to begin those discussions. But we do know that in these particular 6 locations, we have the will, we have the capacity, we have the space, the buy-in to at least take a small step forward and see what it could look like. But I just want to make sure that the community understands we have a very important committee around this work, and we'll be keeping the board apprised of the committee's recommendations.
That's you. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Board Member Shaw.
Thank you. I forgot to mention that, I think in the presentation somewhere, you mentioned that in some of the schools, the 6th graders would join a 5th grade pod if there's a lack of teachers or something like that. That was an idea in the presentation. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think that would be a mistake, because it just seems like it would be another year of 5th grade, keeps them in that same environment, and kind of would stunt them for the transition to 7th grade. And so is that something that's still on the table, the 5th and 6th grade pods at some schools? And which schools would that be?
We're looking at that, particularly where there's a small 6th grade and the ability to add the 5th graders into that so that we can get that departmentalized feel. That's something that's being evaluated as part of that, the curriculum and function committee, for lack of a better word. And we've also looked at one school in particular where some schools look at it from the point of view of, we have a school community and we don't need to locate the grades. They all work together, okay? Other schools look at it from the point of view of, we have this, and Whitmore is one of them, we have this separate area where we have a science room and we have a classroom, or we have a lab room, I should say, and a classroom, and we've got 2 of those, 2 classrooms, 2 lab rooms. We could create a great learning environment for the 5th graders and the 6th graders to both groups make that transition to more departmentalized instruction. So is that set? No. But we can see opportunities for that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Yep.
I think we're good, thanks. So now we're on 8.1, approval of the TUSD academic year calendars, school year 2023 through 24, and school year 24 through 25. Dr. Trujillo?
Yes, President Grijalva, members of the board, we know our parents have been waiting anxiously for the district calendar. We wanted to be able to get this done before the Christmas break, and not just do it for 1 year, but see if the board is willing to go for a 2-year approval. And here to outline the process and talk a little bit about the committee work that went into this is our Senior Director for Curriculum Development, Heidi Aranda.
Good evening,
Hello, good evening.
President Grijalva, Clerk Luna Rose, board members, Superintendent Trujillo, and Council Ross. Do you have the presentation you could put up? And you could go to the second slide.
Is it TUSD academic year calendar? Is that the presentation? I think so. The PowerPoint?
Uh-huh. Tucson Unified School
It's
District.
that third attachment.
Got it? Thank you.
Mhm.
So, on behalf of the calendar committee, I am pleased to present our proposed academic calendars for the 23-24 and 24-25 school years for governing board approval. You can go to slide 3. So the following slide represents our active committee members, and as you can see, we have representation from employee groups, community members, teachers, parents, principals, and district representatives. I was hoping some of our parents could be with us tonight, and but they are either working or don't have childcare, so we are representing them tonight. Next slide. So our committee, which started meeting in August, had the charge of developing and obtaining board approval for 2 district calendars based on research from previous processes and input from district stakeholders. So for the 23-24 and 24-25 school year. Next slide. These were the topics that emerged as we began work on the calendar. The 4 professional learning days emerged as a topic from parents and staff, teachers, as a topic they wanted to address, cultural and religious holidays, and the breaks, of course. So let's talk about the first one, the professional learning days. We decided after working as a committee to look at different options that we wanted to survey our community about the professional learning days. And the big question was really about what day these professional learning days were on. Parents shared how difficult it was to find childcare for their students. And so we surveyed our staff and parents, and the basic questions were, do you want to keep the professional learning day on Thursday, or would you like to move the professional learning day to Wednesday? The Wednesday was a proposal by the committee because Wednesdays are already sort of designated as professional learning days, and they're also an early dismissal day, which parents have to accommodate early pickup for their students anyway. So some parents felt like they needed to accommodate on Wednesday and then on PD days the next day as well. So we thought if we combine those, that might be a good compromise. Next slide. So we had almost 6,000 responses to the survey. As you can see, we had about a little over half were parents, and 14% were TUSD employees and parents. So if you add those two, that was about 66% were from parents. And then we also had 34% of those respondents were TUSD employees, but not TUSD parents. Next slide. This is just a further breakdown of the respondents. Just as you can see, 36% were elementary, 29% high school, 5% elementary and middle, and so forth. Next slide. So these were the responses on the 2 questions. I would like to keep professional learning day on Thursday. You can see more people said no to that answer. To that question. But if we asked, would you like to move it to Wednesday, it was about a split. So we further disaggregated the data. So if you would go to the next slide, and really took a look at who is responding. You can see just parents that were not TUSD employees. You can see there was a significant difference in their response in preference to move it to Wednesdays. So that data really resonated with the committee as our parents really telling us that they preferred a change to Wednesday. Next slide. So we talked about the.
Can I ask a quick
Yep.
question, unless
Sure.
you're going to cover it? So Wednesdays is a day that there's already professional learning at the end of that day.
Yes.
So does this impact, like lessen the opportunities for our staff to work together if we move to Wednesdays?
So it does impact 4 of those professional learning days for sites. We have talked about that. We've talked about, would we accommodate for that at the site and make one of our learning blocks? We have 4 learning blocks. Would we make one, designated perhaps for sites? We still haven't decided the logistics of that, but it would impact 4, 2 in the fall and 2 in the spring.
Okay, thank you.
So, and you see that on the Wednesday. So one of the pros, it's less instructional time affected, right? And that's something that came from teachers. They come back for 2 days of instruction, right? If they're off on a Wednesday, they still have to come back for Thursday and Friday, as opposed to being off on a Thursday and then only having 1 more day of instruction. So having instructionally, it seems there are some pros to Wednesdays. Of course, there's less days for parents to have to make arrangements. It'll be a little bit harder, and we'll have to think a little bit differently for HR, payroll, and finance. Wednesdays are usually a day where they have deadlines, but if they know far in advance, like they said, they can make that work. And then it would be 4 less Wednesday PD sessions for our sites. So we would have to work with sites to accommodate for that. So of course, the Thursdays, the pro is that it keeps Wednesdays for site focus, but it also was 4 additional days for parents to make arrangements, and it kind of facilitates 3-day weekends for students. Next slide. So next I want to talk about the religious and cultural holidays. For this is our 2nd year now that we have produced an additional calendar that identifies religious and cultural holidays that our students may be celebrating and how those holidays are affected when it comes to work and attending school. And what we have found, and the committee spent some time really talking about this, is we produce this because it's important for our teachers to know, right, what days are important for our students. But also, some parents shared how they would like even training for teachers and principals and anyone making meetings such as a field trip or a celebration or a performance, right? To when you're looking at calendaring these things at schools, that you take this into consideration. We had some parents talk about missed field trips for students because things were scheduled on days that they observe. So we'll continue, again, to produce that. I think you have a copy in the board agenda item. And we will work this year to really do that professional development with administrators and teachers on how to use this information. Next slide. So we have 3 recommendations. One is to approve the 2 years of calendars, which include a move of professional learning days from Thursday to Wednesday, and also to publish an interfaith calendar and provide guidance to staff on how to use the resources for planning purposes. Next slide. Any questions?
Okay, board members, questions? I think it's really great that we're doing a 2-year block. It makes it really easy for other programs, not just for our TUSD community, but other programs that are impacted, and look at our calendars to try to sync them If we get this out earlier, it helps other districts that try to do the same thing because they may have employees that, or that work in their district, but their children go to our district or vice versa. And we have a lot of nonprofit organizations that would love to be able to provide services, camps, that kind of stuff for our students. And they plan those things out like 3 years ahead. So this
They
is
have been asking us. We've
Yeah,
been
yeah,
getting
they do.
emails.
They ask often. Okay. Any other board members, any comments or questions? Dr. Ravi.
Thank you, President Grijalva, and thank you for the presentation, Ms. Aranda. Can we go to slide number 9? This is the calendar survey data. I think one more
That's
or
the
couple
one before
back.
that.
So is this exactly how the questions were asked in the survey?
Uh-huh.
And then they were asked as separate questions. They weren't like together in the same kind of like.
Right, they're separate.
So I'm not reading the answers the same way you are. So I would imagine a reason why more parents answered. Again, the next slide. If you go to the next slide, why you have such a discrepancy between how parents answered versus TUSD parents and TUSD employees, was that it was a have professional development on Thursday versus not even have professional development days because parents don't just understand the value of what the professional development does to teachers, and for them it's just another day to provide childcare, versus a Thursday versus Wednesday dichotomy question. Because I don't see that that's what the parents were asked. So I'm not really reading this the same way on Wednesday versus Thursday that was presented. And I'm not sure, do we look into Fridays? Like, why haven't we explored Fridays more so that if we're going to do professional development, the parents can have a 3-day weekend then as a benefit for doing that?
Dr. Trujillo.
The fear for Fridays, and again, this is not a negative critique on our hardworking employees, but it is a factual statement that even now, before we even entertain moving professional learning day to a Friday, Fridays have some of the highest absenteeism rates across the district, all employee groups. I think the concern is exacerbating that, and we've invested a lot in these professional development days, and to just not have people there because it's a day that they can take a personal day and not have to worry about a sub. That, to me, the potential for increasing absenteeism for an employee knowing that they don't have to worry about coverage that particular day could potentially increase significantly the amount of people taking a day. That was our concern and why we wanted to kind of keep it during the week to the extent that we could.
Any other questions? Oh, Board Member Shaw.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. My question is that on the calendar, the proposed calendar that we have, I didn't see any like overlay of the cultural or religious holidays on top of the school calendar. Can we get like a symbol on each of the days that maybe have a significance to someone so that like staff or anyone looking at it doesn't have to like cross-reference to check?
Yeah, we tried that last year. We can try again with communications. It's really hard to get it all on one page and do that, but we can definitely give it a shot.
Even just to have
or
like,
even have it vice
yeah.
versa, right?
Right.
With the school calendar onto the cultural calendar.
Totally, yeah. I mean, you don't have to say what everything is, but just like a key that this is a holiday, a religious or cultural holiday, and then they could look at another sheet. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like italicize it maybe, or something so it, or bold it, I don't know.
Or color a shade. I
Yeah,
don't know.
because
We
you have
could
a
give
lot
it
of
shot
colors
and see.
happening here.
I think they do like a cross on the like monthly calendars that I have at home. I think it's like a cross or something, but we don't have to use a cross.
You're like, that might cause other problems with people. But yeah, I think that makes sense. Clerk Luna Rose.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Grijalva. Thank you for the presentation. I just want to ask if you could explain for those parents who still don't understand what the professional development days do, because I think there's some confusion that it's a day off for teachers and they're not really, and I've heard that myself. So if you could explain to those who are listening and those who are here what exactly they entail.
Absolutely. So what we know from research is that the most effective professional development, or how we help our teachers grow and improve, is when the professional development is job embedded. That means they're not getting it in June when there's no kids and then they go off for July and they forget. I mean, I've definitely been guilty of that. Attended a great workshop in June, and then in July, when I'm preparing, say, what was that? How did that go? So when you're in the thick of teaching, it gives you an opportunity to implement that training. So our teachers attend 4 sessions each professional learning day. We have what we call learning blocks. So they attend 4 different classes. As a district, we have priorities. For example, this year, we have a priority that we want all of our teachers trained on how to use universal design for learning, which helps them meet the needs, various needs of their students. And so we can assure as a district that our teachers are getting that training and that they're not, occupied with students, or they're not exhausted on a Wednesday after teaching all day, or that they're not getting it in the summer when they're off contract and we can't require trainings in the summer. So this really allows us, I know that the discussions earlier about student achievement, it allows us to really work with our teachers to implement effective instructional strategies in the classroom to increase student achievement.
Dr. Trujillo?
So for our parents watching, it also helps to just meet the pure operational needs and priorities of the district. For example, one of our priorities for professional development and for all the teachers is training and best practices in instruction for students with disabilities. Because we have just about 7,000 ex-ed students in the district, they're in just about every classroom, different levels of ex-ed, depending on where they're placed. And so that's not a training we've been able to get the entire district exposed to, because previously those types of trainings have been offered in the summer, off contract or on weekends. So that's a good example of meeting an immediate priority. And if you're an ex-ed parent, you can feel good, like that's what we're doing. We're trying to make sure that every single practitioner in the district is trained on those strategies. And then if you look at our classified staff, we've been able to utilize the day to empower our classified staff with learning. We had a really good training for our bus monitors and our bus drivers in de-escalation training for students that are upset when they're on buses. So those are the types of opportunities that we've had with these days, and we know it is an inconvenience and a hardship for a lot of parents, but I really do appreciate their working with us on this.
Any other questions? So you're asking us to approve both the calendars proposed for school year 23-24 and 24-25?
Correct.
Okay. I'll go ahead and move the item.
I'll second.
So I have a motion and a second by Clerk Luna Rose. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, now we are on 8.2, Acknowledgement of Juneteenth Federal Holiday. Dr. Trujillo.
President Grijalva, members of the board, I'd like our team to stay put because we have an additional request with regard to the calendar. And I'd like to turn it over to Heidi again.
All right. And Margaret Cheney was going to present with me tonight, but she is traveling and hasn't been able to get online yet. So
I'm actually here.
Oh, she is.
Oh, yay.
Fabulous. Okay.
Hello, Miss
Awesome.
Cheney.
Welcome.
Okay.
All right. So tonight, greetings again. Tonight I'm bringing forth an item that the calendar committee recommends that the board consider. Next slide. So Juneteenth was signed into law as a federal holiday by President Joe Biden on Thursday, June 17th of 2021, so about a year and a half ago. Many states observe Juneteenth. Arizona has recognized Juneteenth, but hasn't taken the next step to make it a state holiday. You can follow a link to this, the White House briefing of that declaration. And so the committee felt like the board should consider what is going to be the position of TUSD with Juneteenth as the newest federal holiday. So if you go to the next slide, you'll be able to see these are the federal holidays. There's not that many of them. And you'll see that some of these were off, like New Year's Day were off. It's a paid holiday. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is also off and paid. President's Day is not, as well as Columbus Day is not off and not paid. And so Juneteenth hasn't really been identified as the board's, governing board's designation or recognition. Next slide. So the calendar committee would like to suggest that we acknowledge Juneteenth by not having summer classes for students that day so that they can acknowledge that holiday. This past summer in our summer school, we had a collaborative, a joint program with the Pascuayaki Head Start program, and we ended up not having classes that day because they also didn't have, that was not a work day for them. So because it's in the summer, it doesn't affect, instructional hours or minutes or the school year days. But we could acknowledge Juneteenth by having that day off for our students in the summer, and that we would follow just the way the federal government does. If it falls on a weekend, that we would acknowledge it on the closest work day. So on a Saturday would be a Friday, etc. Margaret, would you like to add anything?
Well, I would say that, of course, as union president, we would ask that our employees have the day off paid. And mostly, really, it is, there aren't as many employees in the summer as there is the rest of the year. And of course, this particular holiday impacts former Confederate states more than others. And so we feel that, the heritage that is within the state would warrant that.
Okay, and so, I'm sorry, the date is in the 20, I'm trying to get to the right calendar. So in the 2023-24 calendar.
Senator Grijalva, it would
Yes,
be
go ahead.
Monday, June 19th. It falls on a Monday.
Oh, we're talking like immediate.
That's
Okay,
the recommendation, correct?
And so if this is a paid holiday for, I guess I worry if we have summer school and it's such a small amount of time that our students are in classes, would we then have to extend the summer school day or their period? Can we do that?
The summer school is going to have to be, depending on the date, and here it looks like we have a hard date. It's June 19th falls on a Monday. And Monday is a normal summer school instructional day. That's the last week of the summer school session for us. We do have graduation tentatively scheduled for the 28th. That's the summer graduation. So something would have to be done with that 19th. That non-instructional day would have to move to some spot.
So the grade levels that affects the most is high school, because they are working with instructional minutes and trying to get certain hours. And they run 2 10-day sessions in June. So so they would still have to run 2 10-day sessions, but there should be enough days in June to do that. If it's too difficult to sort of what you brought up, Dr. Trujillo, with the graduation date, I know there's a lot of preparation for that summer graduation. At least if it could be the following year. So part of the 2 calendars that were just approved, that would give the team ample time to plan summer school, still keeping the 2 10-day periods for high school, and arrange for a graduation date.
So this is, this would be, if I heard Ms. Cheney correctly, recommendation that the employees get the day, they don't come into work on that day, on the 19th, or?
So the committee is recommending that we acknowledge it with the students, and Ms. Cheney was suggesting that that also be acknowledged with employees.
I mean, I understand. I guess I'll hear from other board members to see where they are, but my inclination would be to really make it meaningful by having students do activities and participate in something and educate them on Juneteenth, because I don't think a lot of our community really understand it, the holiday. And I mean, I would take it as more of a learning opportunity also for the staff that are here. But I also, if we decide to move in this direction, Dr. Trujillo, do you have any information about the cost if we were to opt for a employee day off?
Yes. So I've asked Mr. Hernandez to be prepared for just the operational cost on a day-to-day basis on what it takes to run summer school in terms of all the transportation, the food, the staffing. Take it away, Mr. Hernandez.
So good evening, board members. So I did take a look at so these are averages. Obviously, summer school programs change year over year, but on average, kind of what we spend. So looking at just summer school, we spend about $200,000 a day on just the school portion, right? We're talking about staffing. But that includes bus drivers, the monitors, TAs, teachers, everybody who...
Admin?
Well, and so admin is a little bit different depending on who the administrators are, right? So normally we have coordinators, but if you're like a 12-month principal, like our high school principals, we're going to pay you regardless into that month. So when you think about it, for summer school without the 12 months, so just summer school staff, it's about $200,000 a day, approximately. About 2/3 of it comes from federal funding, so we pay from Title I, generally ESSER in the last couple of years, DSEG is the next chunk of funding. Our 12-month staff, who are going to be here through June 30th already, we spend about $324,000 a day on salary. So that's anybody and everybody who's going to be here all the way to June 30th. So all told, we're talking about a $500,000 price tag to make up that day or to give the paid day off. But you would need to make up the day to...
Right, and so that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So it's not just $200,000. You're paying the $200,000 for the holiday, and then at some point we have to find... Right. We have to reschedule that day. So
Correct.
It's really double.
Yeah, I mean, so that...
It's like $1 million.
So you're already... The initial $200,000 is a sunk cost. So I'm giving you what the additional expense would be because that's the cost for that day already.
Okay,
so,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so
right.
I'm telling you that you're going to need to spend another $200,000 for summer school under the $324,000 for 12-month staff.
Okay, all right, thank you. Questions, board member? I think Ms. Cheney has her... Do you have your hand up, Ms. Cheney?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great.
I just wanted to make a quick comment if I could.
Mm-hmm. Please.
So Juneteenth is really, it's a community holiday, right? Mm-hmm. So historically, it was the announcement of freedom for all the enslaved in this part of the West, if you will. And it came much later than other states with the Civil War. And so it really, if you're going to make it an activity kind of a day, it really needs to be a school-wide kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. If you really wanted to celebrate it properly, hopefully with the communities that the schools are in, with the Black community in particular, and that's my 2 cents. Yeah. If they're not able to, be at home and have a block party or something, then certainly the rest of the community would be part of it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Cheney. Dr. Ravi.
All right, thank you, President Grijalva. So I want to make sure I understand what the proposal is here. So when we acknowledge Juneteenth, but not having summer classes, that means it's a paid day off for anyone with direct student contact, but not a paid day off for everyone else, unless we decide to make it a paid day off fully. Is that what the proposal is before us right now?
Margaret, you can help me clarify, but I think the committee's intention, would be a paid day off for 12-month employees. So the staff
Right.
that is working in the summer is working on an hourly, so they're not contracted employees in the summer. So they wouldn't get paid, for not instructing because they're getting paid hourly. They're not on contract during that time.
Right.
So we
So that
wouldn't have the
$200,000
$200,000 cost then?
That $200,000 cost should not.
I mean, if you don't want to, you don't have to pay for them. So because they are hourly, she's right. They are hourly. They're not on contract. So we pay them for the work they actually do on those days. That's approximately what we spend. But if we're going to do it for 12 months, so the question then becomes for the summer school staff, you're still going to have to make up if they're not working, and for high schools, for example, where there's, a number of instructional minutes that they need for their credits, if they need to make up those minutes. So then we're going to have to make up the cost anyway, if you don't pay it on the 19th, for example, and you decide that we're going to do it on July 1.
Extend it. So would the suggestion be then to extend our summer school into the next week?
So Mr. Armenta and I are scheduling the summer school, and what it would be was we would start a day earlier. So they would have a planning day and then start teaching summer school and do 10 days. I don't know where Juneteenth falls within those 10 days, but they would do 10 days and then start the next session of 10 days. So they would still be paid the same amount, the 20 days for the work that they did. They just wouldn't work that one day.
Aren't our schools right now don't they already have a framework for the time that summer school's going to happen? I've received some information from my daughter's high school on this is when summer school's going to happen.
We have not
No, you haven't
shared that
set-
with administration yet. We have a draft of
But,
the
but has
dates.
it changed year after year, or it's been about the
Yes.
same? Okay.
The structure is always the same. It is 10 days and 2 sessions of 10 days. Elementary, for example, last year, we went from 5 days a week to 4 days a week because there isn't a required, and we were having such a difficulty filling the summer school positions that it made it attractive to have a 4-day week. But high school does have a 5-day week, and they have 2 10-day sessions.
Okay. Dr. Robbie and then Board Member Shaw.
All right. So I usually am very against having things come back to us, but it's a study action, and I would really like this to come back to us with a little more concrete details on, is this only high school that we're worried about? Is this like the K-8 summer program? What does the calendar look like without Juneteenth as a holiday, with Juneteenth? Right now on the budget item, on the item 8.2, there's no fiscal impact. We're talking about fiscal impact. So, and now we're a little confused on whether we would have it paid, or whether since there's a contract, it wouldn't be paid, there would be no cost. So I'd love to have this come back with a little more succinct details so we can know exactly what we're approving and how it affects the summer school and affects the cost.
Thank you, Dr. Robbie. I just wanted to add that the committee felt really strongly to bring this to the board for your discussion and your consideration. And if you have any suggestions for the committee to take back as to what ideas you would like to recognize and acknowledge Juneteenth, that would be really valuable for us. So we know the direction that you would like to go as a district in recognizing this date.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Shaw?
Thank you. Well, I am in favor of passing this. I think it should be a paid holiday. I don't think there's many details to really mull over. Pay the people who are working on that day. Simple as that. $200,000. Come on now. My people worked for how many hundreds of years for free? Let's give everyone a paid holiday who's working. It's pretty simple here. Though I do think that some of this is not fleshed out as far as we're going to acknowledge it. Well, how are we going to acknowledge it? I would like to see maybe a proclamation from the district. I'm the secretary of the Tucson Juneteenth Festival Board, and we did put out a proclamation. The city of Tucson did as well. I think the county did. I'm not saying we should copy and paste what they have already, but I do think that that we deserve a proclamation, not just an acknowledgement, not just a a paid holiday. We deserve reparations. Let's just say that. Not going to go there. I already did, and yeah, that failed. But listen, I think that I'm comfortable moving this tonight because I think the information that staff gave us is pretty clear. It's going to be around $200,000 for the staff that are working on that day. And as far as teaching moment, I think that the staff at the school could mention it and go into it during that week. But of course, I believe the Juneteenth committee has already sort of helped some schools, specifically the high schools, to help them develop programming during Black History Month. And of course, we can work with them and African American Student Services to really drive home the point about Juneteenth, why it's important, why it should be celebrated, and why we have the day off for those in summer school. Thanks.
I think the cost would be $324,000. The $200,000 was just for the staff that are hourly. So if the idea, I think the reason why Mr. Hernandez brought it forward is the idea is that the priority would be students not in classes, which means that we wouldn't be paying the teachers necessarily, or wouldn't have to, but then we would have to reschedule that day somewhere. Like the example was, we start a day early for summer school. But if we're only going to focus on the school staff that's working with students, then it's about $200,000. But if you include everybody that is a 12-month employee, then that's where the $324,000 amount comes in, right? Okay.
Okay. So, sorry. So I'm okay also with paying everyone $324. Like, that's not the great difference from $200. And I think our employees deserve an extra payday, frankly. So I'll move to make Juneteenth a paid holiday for all employees.
Board Member Shaw moved the item. It died for lack of a second. I think that if we did vote in Pima County for a paid holiday, it was administrative. So you get to pick the day, so it doesn't negatively impact all of the system. I do worry about the impact of to our summer school, because I have dates. I'm not supposed to have dates, but I have some dates that they were tentatively scheduled, and I worry about that. And so I might even be willing to work on the 2023-24 calendar, because that gives us a bigger window. But the impact, if we're not going to, if it's going to be a holiday, it's going to be a holiday. So the argument then would be, is it really only 324, or is it really 524 if you add in the summer school? So I just am thinking about equity across the system. And then if you look at, $500,000, that's a pretty big investment for our district. The price tag's pretty hefty. Clerk Luna Rose, and then Dr. Robbie.
Thank you very much. So I just wanted to make clear that I don't think any of us are against having a Juneteenth. I just wanted a little bit more information, and I guess this is maybe a Dr. Trujillo question. I know that we don't really, and it does fall, because I did look into it, Indigenous Peoples Day. So I think you start asking those questions, Indigenous Peoples Day falls within the next fall break. So because I'm not, and Ms. Grijalva probably has that institutional knowledge why that has not been observed by the district.
It was still listed as Columbus Day for, I don't know, when did we change that? Unfortunately, not that long ago. It's probably like 6 years or something. And it's a federal holiday, can you go to that slide that shows the other federal holidays? Yeah, so and I would prefer that we use Indigenous Peoples Day instead of Columbus Day, just sidebar. Go ahead, Ms. Rose. I'm sorry.
Okay, so if, I think, I think we have to think about if we're, I guess maybe I'm saying I would love to see also an Indigenous Peoples' Day off as well, but although it seems to, the last 2 calendars, it's fallen during our fall break. So I don't know how we can make that acknowledged, but right now, instead of, getting down into the weeds into something like that, I think with Juneteenth, I think we just need to figure out how else is going to work for the students. I do like the idea that Ms. Aranda just said about moving it a day back. So that way there's that 10-day break. If I'm doing my math correctly, I think it works. I think it could work well. Mr. Armenta is shaking his, nodding his head, yes, I think it worked well. So I think I could be in favor of something like that, just so we don't lose that instruction. We're not, especially if now we're towards the end of this year and I don't want everybody having to scramble after our vote, that we have to hurry up and do this for the summer graduation, and making sure that all the students, especially the high school students, are getting their instruction.
Okay, Dr. Ravi, and then, okay, I thought I saw a screen. Go ahead, Dr. Ravi.
And I also want to say that this isn't about Juneteenth. I've been very much in favor of this. When I was CEO at SAFE, we moved to make Juneteenth a paid holiday at the nonprofit that I ran recently. So I'm very much in favor of looking into this and figuring out how we can make this happen. My only request is it comes to us, whether it's next week or next month, it comes back to us with some of these questions answered. What does the graduation calendar look like? The summer school calendar look like? Let's get this visual out so we know exactly what we're approving here on the logistics, as well as getting a succinct proposal on the cost. And if it's going to be costing $524,000 or whatever the amount is, I wouldn't be adverse to that either. But figuring out where that's going to come from. It looks like the 300 something is going to be a sunk cost, and so really the 200 is only additional cost that we have, the 200,000. So looking how that looks in the projections, out 5 years and where that money is coming from. So I'm willing to support the proposal. I don't think we have all the information tonight. I'd like this to come back with all that information answered.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought I saw a hand. Any other questions or comments? So Dr. Trujillo, if you can get that information and bring it back at our next meeting? Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you. Okay, now we are on consent agenda. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, President Grijalva, members of the board, I'd like to present for your consideration the consent agenda as arranged tonight, items 6.2 and 6.3.
Okay, thank you. Board members, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Dr. Ravi moved the item.
I'll second.
And Clerk Luna Rose seconds. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Now we're on action item 7.1, consideration of adoption of school year 21-22 superintendent goals. Dr. Trujillo, or legal.
Yes, President Grijalva, members of the board, I'll turn this one over to our general counsel, Mr. Ross.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, board members. So this is the approval of the superintendent's goals for last school year, 21-22, which the board would need to approve prior to evaluating those at an upcoming meeting. These goals are basically rolled over from the previous year's goals. The only changes that have been made are to update the baseline information, update the years, obviously, and baseline information to compare goals against, so updating the previous year's number so that there's something to measure against. Also, there's a removal of the references to AZ merit, which is no longer used, and in place of that, saying state assessments. So this would be evaluated by the board at an upcoming meeting when it does its evaluation for the 21-22 school year for the superintendent.
Okay. I'll go ahead and move the item.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Oppose.
Item passes 2-1 with Board Member Shaw voting no. Okay, now we're on 7.2 Governing Board Policy AC, non-discrimination, second reading. Dr. Trujillo, Mr. Arnoff.
Yes, for the next series of agenda items, we'll keep it right here with both our Associate General Counsel and our General Counsel as the board considers a series of second reads.
Thank you. So good evening, everybody. We were going to start with policy AC. If we could scroll down to the second page, third page?
Third.
Fourth page.
Third.
Third page. Oh, I see. That's not, I have the red line version up, so I got it. All right. So the paragraph added is the.
Oh, I'm sorry, can you use the version with the track changes? Please, that makes it a lot easier
Yeah.
for everyone.
So we presented this on a first read in an effort to clarify this policy, especially around situations that come up when we have language that is used in books, often literature, that we don't want used aloud in classrooms, and how do we navigate that? And we're trying to add some clarity into that and protecting our students and our staff from using this language. The original draft that we brought in for the first read, we've changed somewhat based on the discussion we had during that board meeting. So we clarified, we had said racial slurs and epithets, but of course we are concerned about slurs and epithets that go to other identities beyond race. So we've tried to clarify that language so that it's clear that we're talking about any category that's otherwise protected in AC. And I know there was some conversation about whether, sort of how we want to illustrate that. We've used the example of the N-word, but also tried to be clear that it's not limited to that. We hesitate to give a long list of examples, both because we don't want to give the impression that that is exhaustive, and because we don't want to re-traumatize people just reading through a list of words. So this was the approach that we are suggesting, but of course we'll turn it over to you. This is the second read. There are comments that were included in the materials posted to board docs, and the request tonight is to move to implement this policy.
Okay, board members? Board Member Shaw.
Thank you. I personally don't think you need to remove the words racial from the title use of racial slurs and epithets. I mean, epithet can encompass all the other nasty words that maybe we're thinking are left out of that by using the word racial, but I think the fact that we have a race problem in this country, we should address it in our policy directly.
I do think, I've also heard on some campuses when I'm walking around, slurs that for children with special needs, and words that I remember hearing when I was in school and thought that is not something that, it doesn't sound right. And I hear people on our campuses using, and so I get the idea that we don't want to use a line, but it also has to do with identity. I've heard a lot of words that are just really ugly and hateful, and so I don't know if this covers all of them. And I'm not opposed to leaving in racial. I just want to make sure that people clearly understand that it's not just racial. Yeah. Any other comments, questions? Board Member Shaw.
Oh, thank you. Also, I don't see it written in here explicitly about what a student or a staff member should do when coming into contact with the N-word in a instructional material. I think we should be really direct and explicit that if they happen upon the N-word in a piece of literature, that the staff member and the students, and they all should be told explicitly that they should use the abbreviated word and not read it out loud. I would like to see that in the policy because I know there's been a lot of confusion about that with our staff and our students. And, you know, when it comes up in a piece of literature like Huckleberry Finn, you know, it's a teaching moment that when you see it in literature, instead of reading it out loud, just abbreviate it and why that's important.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Yes, Board Member Luna, or Clerk Luna Rose.
Oh, thank you. I'm okay with leaving in racial as well. I'm just wondering, and just because we all know what epithets mean, but I'm just kind of, you know, but can we word this in such a way that can kind of explain what that exactly means? I don't know if we need a dictionary, but I just kind of feel like if a student isn't quite sure, and I don't know if there can be such wording or if it's even worth the time doing so, but I just want to make sure that this is succinct as possible, that, you know, somebody's not reading this and being like, well, I didn't know what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just kind of worry that we're leaving it open for a little bit more interpretation.
Oh, Dr. Shaw.
So I think if we leave racial there, it will be interpreted as being racial slurs and racial epithets, as opposed to things based on religion or LGBTQ status or other types of slurs and epithets out there. So I think taking out racial, and I think the example is a racial example, I think is an appropriate way to communicate the expectations from this policy.
I disagree.
Or we can be explicit, or we can add, I don't know.
Yeah, add
How to
a
word
word
it,
in.
yeah.
Add a word that is inclusive to whatever and whoever you think is left out in that title. You know, why is the N word used? Are we the only ones who can bear the brunt of trauma? Why is the N word the only one that's you know,
used as an
written
example.
in here? Yeah, why are we always the example? Why? And also, another question is, how long does a student or staff member have to report discrimination to the EEO compliance officer?
That I don't know off the top of my head.
Mr. Ross?
I don't believe that there is a timeline to the EEO officer. There's a timeline for federal reports, but not to the EEO officer, so they can come at any time.
Could I address a couple of the things that have come up? So with respect to the title piece, use of, if it were left as use of racial slurs and epithets, I think just from a lawyer perspective, it becomes ambiguous whether racial applies to slurs or to both slurs and epithets, going to Dr. Shaw's point. I think that is arguably clarified by reading the paragraph and saying it's epithets based on any category protected, but I do think that creates some confusion about what the scope of the policy is. If we wanted to say use of epithets and racial slurs, I'm not sure if that better addresses it. Also, in terms of defining epithets, we can add a definition of epithets. I don't think we thought it was necessary, but certainly happy to do that if the board wants to add that. You know, there is a definition section in the policy, and we could add that in.
I think that the policy title sort of covers it for me. It's where we start getting into examples that maybe that could be more in regulation and less out of the policy, but it says policy, non-discrimination based on disability, race, color, religion, religious beliefs, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression. I mean, I think it's when we start to we use an example that it sort of becomes more narrow if you read it that way. Go ahead, Dr. Avi.
Yeah, I'm afraid we're kind of overthinking this and making this more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, I think what the intent is pretty clear based on the wording here in terms of how this would affect, discipline and management of both of students and staff. And so I'm happy to move the item if we're I think we're getting too into the weeds of this policy.
We
So
have
Dr.
a
Robbie's
huge
moved the item?
problem at our schools with racial epithets, slurs, all kinds of things. And so I think, taking the time to really make sure that this policy works for our staff who are trying to get a hold of this situation at our schools. I think this policy there's not enough in it. There's just not enough.
I appreciate that, but we also have, around the entire country, young queer and trans kids killing themselves because of slurs and epithets directed at them as well. And I think the use of slurs and epithets in our schools is not just a racial issue. This is an LGBTQ issue. This is based on religion and other factors. And I think we need to acknowledge that when we write our policy to make sure it's inclusive of everyone who's being attacked in our schools.
Exactly, and I think it is inclusive, or if it's not, let's take the time to do that. With your original point, Dr. Robbie, if we reverse the title, use of epithets and racial slurs, does that work for you, or should we add another word or define things more? Because I'm all about inclusivity.
Ms. Grijalva?
Yes.
I'm okay with, I know it seems sort of arbitrary, but I think even just flipping that, the title of it, epithets and racial slurs, where, and maybe a little bit more interpretation or definition of epithet in there would be okay, and I'm fine with that. I do agree with Ms. Shaw's point. I understand, the wording there, such as the N word. Unfortunately, I think Ms. Shaw, and I think you well know as a member of that community, that's the one word that I think most people understand and react viscerally to. So I think that's why it was being used. But I'm happy to just even take out that part, just to make it.
Just flip it.
Yeah.
Would you be comfortable with that, Dr. Robbie?
What's the difference between a slur and epithet?
I think it's just a flip of the. They want to keep racial. What I'm hearing is the importance of using racial slurs in this definition, but we don't want it to be limited to just racial slurs. And I don't know an easier way to wordsmith it right now. And so really you're just doing epithets or racial slurs. I understand your point. I think in the regulation of this item that's given to staff, that could be addressed more specifically. I don't know. Board Member Shaw? Because we have a motion on the floor, but I'm sorry, it dies for lack of a second because we haven't had a second yet. So are we okay with the suggestion that Clerk Luna Rose made where we just flip it? And we could pass the policy and send it out? Or do we want it to come back?
I'm okay with my suggestion of, flipping the epithet.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was.
That's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Board Member Shaw, go ahead.
And then also adding in, I don't know where, but that if a staff member is teaching a piece of literature with that word, or any word for that matter, that they use an abbreviated term instead of reading the word aloud.
Yeah, I just don't think the word should be used at all on any campus.
Well, it says that in there, the last line, the last sentence.
It says permissible, but only with substantial context setting and student preparation.
Permissible in the context of the literature or in the primary
Right, but that they
source.
could use it, and that's been an issue that's come up on campuses. And
The
so-
last sentence addresses that, though, in terms of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I think it's the use
Okay.
of primary sources with those terms is permissible with the context setting, but the use of the words by
You can't
our
speak it.
staff is out of bounds.
Did that come out clear enough for you, Board Member Shaw?
No, I mean, where is it other than that it shouldn't be used except, yada, yada. Like, let's be explicit. We've already gone through lawsuits about this, that if it comes up in a piece of literature that the staff and the students must use the abbreviated term or skip the dang word, as I did when I was reading Huckleberry Finn with my daughter. And it comes up a lot.
I think it's that the use of primary sources. So like resource materials, maybe you change that you can use that material. For example, like Huck Finn, you cannot, the speaking or writing of such epithets by TUSD employees at any time be grounds for discipline up to and including termination. Maybe separate those so it pops out a little more.
Can I make a suggestion?
Go ahead, Dr. Ravi.
So here's my suggestion. So for all of this, if it's going to move the item, then let's do use of epithets and racial slurs. And then at the end of the second to last sentence, comma or semicolon, any statement of that term needs to be abbreviated.
Any use of the term?
Any use of that term needs to be abbreviated. So that even if it's in primary sources, it's allowable with the substantial context setting and student preparation, semicolon, any use of that term needs to be abbreviated.
Okay. Is everyone comfortable with that?
That works.
Could
Okay,
we,
do you want-
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
To complicate it, but just so we're clear, because that sentence does talk about the primary sources using it, can we just be clear that it's any use of the term by staff or students?
Yes.
I think, and maybe change that from primary sources to like resource materials, books or something. I don't know if people, I don't know. I mean, we glossed over it and it didn't pop out to us that this is specifically like a book or some literature or something. Primary sources, I don't know what that is. I don't know. Does that make sense? Or is everyone okay with that? All right, so Dr. Ravi, would you like to move?
Sure, I'll move the item as we've discussed.
Okay.
I'll second.
So I have a motion by Dr. Ravi and a second by Clerk Luna Rose. Any additional discussion? I think that was a good compromise and discussion. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously, 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're on, I forgot where we are. 7.3, Governing Board Policy BG, Board Policy Process.
Thank you, President Grijalva. This is a second read also on the Board Policy BG and the exhibit that's been attached to it. The major changes are adding clarification that the legislature may sometimes require a policy change. Also adding clarification that was formerly just in the flow chart, that the previous flow chart that you have, well, the current one that you have, that that's the default process, but the board will reserve the right to move back a step or skip a step if it wants to.
Okay.
That's a statement of just the power of the board. There was a comment that was submitted with this, with the one comment that was against that concept, thinking that it was a change, even though it's not a change from current policy. This is a second reading. Hopefully, the flow chart is a little bit easier to follow, even though there's more boxes on it. But I think just from our work on it and the suggestions the board had previously, I think it's a good reflection of the practice of the board, still including all the feedback loops that the board wants to have from the community groups, employee groups and such.
Okay, and we've very rarely used the skip a step. So it's like, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and vote for it. Sometimes when it's just a typo and like the addition of 2 words didn't really do anything to change the policy, we've done that, but it's happened very infrequently.
Maybe once every couple of years.
Yeah, okay. Any thoughts, board members? Board Member Shaw.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm kind of uncomfortable with this policy. I think, the public deserves to know. I don't like this little thing. We could skip a step at any moment. I'm okay with going back a step, but to skip a step and not have a public process, I think is not doing right by our constituents.
Any other thoughts? Go ahead, Dr. Ravi.
Sure. I'm not sure a board majority today can really dictate what a board does in the future. And a board in the future can decide to suspend the policy and to skip a step anyway. And I think this just institutionalizes kind of what happens and just make sure this is on paper what is common practice and what is practice currently.
Okay. Board Member Shaw.
Mr. Ross, can you point out to me in the policy where it states, in the original policy, where it states that we can skip a step? Because I'm like having trouble
It was in
seeing
the
that.
flow chart, the exhibit BG-1.
Okay, but what's like more important, the flow chart or the actual policy?
They're
like
together.
They're together,
Yes.
but it's not explicit in the policy. It's just in the flow chart.
It wasn't explicit, and this effort is to make it transparent that it's in the policy as well. So it's not.
So
just
it was in the
hidden
flow chart and not in the policy. So this is just trying to correct that because the practice isn't changing at all. It's just the flow chart highlighted that we could do that at any time, but it wasn't listed in the policy. So this is just making sure that they're aligned.
Okay, I'm trying to pull up the original flow chart.
It was in small print on the bottom. It's not really small, it was bold
small
actually,
print
but
on the bottom.
yeah.
That's not even within the flow chart. It's
That's
a
what I'm
note.
saying. That's what the problem
Okay,
was.
when did the note come in and when was the policy created? That's what I want to know because it seems like we added that in like, oh snap, we're violating our own policy. Let's put this little note on the bottom.
No, that was board approved at the same time. It wasn't added later.
Okay. Well, perhaps we should just take it out and, just follow the policy as it's written.
We can take it out and we can take it off the flow chart, and then any board that decides to can vote to change it. But it doesn't happen very often at all.
Right, but it could.
Right. No, what I'm saying is it doesn't happen, so I don't think eliminating it is going to be a big deal, right? Okay.
I'll move to eliminate the skip a step in the original policy and as it's written in the revised version.
I'll second.
Okay, so all we're really keeping then is the typo for state legislature. Governing board may take action after hearing the superintendent's recommendations. And then we're eliminating those two sentences of governing board may send the policy back to any step. Okay. And then each board member at the time of. So all of the red lines except for those two sentences, and then the flow chart, we just delete that little piece at the bottom of the flow chart. Is that the motion?
Correct.
And you understood that? Okay, go ahead, Dr. Ravi.
So I'll say I think it's a really bad idea. I think it's really handicaps future boards. The board needs to be flexible. There's like a state legislation that we're not compliant with, and we need to like move something quickly. Or there's some other issue that's on student safety or something that we're like, oh crud, we need something before something bad happens. That really handicaps if we need to go through all the steps all the time. Then like we said, every couple of years something comes up where something needs to happen and steps need to be skipped, and that happens in those times. And I think not having that flexibility explicit in policy is, I think, a really bad idea.
And just to add to that, Dr. Ravi, the board has to vote to skip or go back. It's not like we can just, okay, we're going to skip it this one time without a majority of the board voting for it. So I'm comfortable with the policy process, the red line, the way it's submitted, because it just, we all have to vote. A majority of the board has to vote to skip any step. Otherwise, it goes through the process. Board Member Shaw.
Do we have to vote to skip a step? Because I never remember voting to skip a step.
Right, because we haven't
When did
as
we
a
do
board.
that?
We have to vote, like if the policy passes, let's say it's the first read, and we decide, we're just going to implement this right now. We have to vote, actively vote to not put it out for a public process. We have to say, we're going to vote to implement this right now. Otherwise, it goes through the process. So we've never voted to change it. I think literally it's been, like, it happens once every 5 years, that we actually say, you know what, this is not even a big deal. Why are we going out for public process? Why can't we just implement it now? I'm trying to remember the example of the policy. It was something that I felt like, that we all felt, it was a 5-0 if memory serves. So you have to say, let's say this is the first read board policy process. You know, we all agree with this. I think it's great. I think we're going to do it right now, and we don't have to go out for public process. So I'm going to move this item without the public process, skipping the public process, and we implement it starting today. And then we have to vote for that. Otherwise, it goes through that process. Like, that's the default.
Right.
Right? Okay.
If I may, I only think it's not necessary because, like, 2 years of COVID, like, if we didn't have to skip a step then, like, when else would we have to do it? Only when it's just something that's just so mundane that, like, let's just pass it. So for the really important things, I don't want this little addition to usurp the people's right to comment.
Right. And you would just have to vote for it either way. So I think we have a motion and a second. I don't know that we have clear majority, but we'll go ahead and vote. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Luna Rose?
Gosh, no.
Dr. Ravi?
No.
Ms. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Grijalva?
No. So the item does not pass. 3-1 with Board Member Shaw voting in favor. The item fails.
So can I make a motion to
Yes, go
accept
ahead, Dr.
the item as redlined?
Okay, I'll second. Have a motion and a second. I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Luna Rose?
Yes.
Dr. Ravi?
Yes.
Ms. Shaw?
No.
Ms. Grijalva?
Yes. Item passes 3-1 with Board Member Shaw voting against. Okay, now we are on item Governing Board Policy IJL 7.4, Library Materials Selection and Adoption. This is a second reading. Is
This
there
will
enough?
be back to me. Thank you. So this is the second read for policy IJL. This is one of the policies that we had to update because of new legislation. This is legislation that specifically required language in policy, and what we've put in the policy is effectively only that which we were required to put in policy. For the board's information, we also have a regulation which outlines a little bit more of the process that the schools will use to have the review process and posting for newly purchased library materials. It is only for schools that have a full-time library media specialist. That's specified in the policy, and again, that's based on the legislation. We only really have kind of a handful of schools that currently qualify for that, but we have the system in place. It's ready to be rolled out at the start of the year on schedule. And yeah, so this is the second read, and we're asking the board to adopt it tonight.
And this, just to clarify, this last bullet that says district libraries that have agreements with county free library districts, we don't have any of those.
We don't
So
currently have any of those.
We have we have county libraries all over, but we don't have an agreement. And so that wouldn't apply to us. And then you said we have most of our high schools?
Most of our high schools have a full-time library media
Librarian.
specialist, and I think some of our middle, I think it's 13 schools. I'd have to go back
Okay.
and double check the precise number if we wanted it, but that could also change. And it's not based on who has it now, it's based on who has it at any given moment.
Right, and this is the state law that passed that basically parents get to go to the libraries at their schools and find out what their children are reading.
So there's kind of two big
Right,
things that
okay.
came up in the law. One is that the parents can go and access a list of what their student has checked out. That is effective immediately, and we're already, I think, capable of doing that should it come up. The more onerous piece of it is that what starts in January is that schools that are purchasing new library materials, they have to post those materials for 60 days and parents have an opportunity to review those materials posted. And that's really it. I mean, so it's a means by which parents can access newly purchased library materials to see what's being purchased at
But
the
it doesn't
libraries.
change the fact that we can purchase them. It just
No.
means they have to be available for 60 days.
Right. It doesn't stop
Okay.
the purchase process. It doesn't change anything with that. It just makes it available so families at the school can see what's being purchased.
Okay. Board members? Yeah, Clerk Luna Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Aronoff and Ms. Grijalva. So one comment and one question. I guess I'll start with the question first. What exactly does county-free library districts mean?
I didn't look into that very closely because we don't have any agreements with any.
Small districts that partner with libraries.
Okay, so
Yeah,
like
so
a
they
smaller
don't-
district than
Right, so
ours.
most schools, most of the schools that I know of don't partner that way, but some of them are rural districts.
Okay,
They
that
don't
makes
have a
sense.
library on their campus, and so the county free libraries give them access. So sort of like a community library that drops the books off at schools, stuff like that.
Okay, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then just more of a comment that, I think our parents can go at any time, and I just think this is, I mean, it's always good to review policy, but it's just, I just have to voice my disdain for tying the hands of teachers and librarians, and that this is just, it's bad. So, for lack of a better word. My other question, sorry, Dr. Robbie, and then I'll. I guess it's more Dr. Trujillo. I know as a parent, I can go into my daughter's school and say, well, Lily's reading this book, so I have that right already, correct? So I just want the public to know that they already have that right.
Right.
Okay.
Any parent can request to see titles. We have to make them publicly available.
Okay. It's just a waste of time.
We
Sorry.
have to know what books we're going to have to buy when our children lose them. That's kind of what it is.
Yeah, I get
But
that.
this is not what this law is intended to do. It
No,
really is
it's not.
just trying to take all personal privilege away from children who should be able to pick out whatever book they want without, it being public information. But anyway, Dr. Robbie.
This law does a lot more than that. This is not just a bad law. This is a horrendous law, and this
Yeah,
directly
I
attacks
agree.
queer students.
Absolutely.
This directly attacks queer students. Because a parent hasn't put together a relationship with their student to have a safe and open environment for their child to come out to them, now they can spy on their student and go to the school and see what books they're checking out.
Yeah.
And this is going to lead to more depression, anxiety, lead to more suicides. This is going to be this is a horrible law, and this policy is an unfortunate policy because it's following state law, which was meant to attack queer students.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's get this straight. This is a terrible law. This is going to hurt students.
Yep.
And I'm going to vote against this because this is, I know this will pass and everything, and I know we need to stay compliant because this is a statement because I don't want to pass a policy I know is going to hurt students like myself when I was a teenager who needed the freedom to be able to learn and explore who I was as a young gay teen without my parents knowing because I didn't come out to my parents until I was 22 years old. And so, our state legislature, we keep on electing people across the state of Arizona that want to hurt our students, and that's really unfortunate.
Or any student that wants to get information that isn't being provided to them at their home. Like Judy Blume ones when you're in elementary school. I mean, there's a lot of books that just sort of, students can read, and I don't know, it's really discouraging. And since we're here, what happens if we don't pass it?
Yeah, that was my next question.
If we don't pass it, then we haven't complied with the law that says we have to have a policy with these things in it.
And then what? My last board meeting is next week. I'm just asking.
Ms. Grijalva,
Yes.
theoretically, the state could make some kind of, especially ADE, could take some kind of action to address it. There is also the new statute that allows for parents to sue for usurping their parental rights. This could possibly
This
be
could
brought under that
technically fall?
umbrella.
Okay. Any other, Board Member Shaw?
Oh, thank you. Let's see. Well, I'm concerned about the whole full-time media specialist because I worry that as a district, we will use that as an excuse to understaff our libraries. And so even if we had the money, we might not look to staff some of our school libraries with a full-time media specialist. But I do want to ask Dr. Trujillo, since it mentions you in this policy, what are the procedures that you've established for parents to access? Well, I know that there's like a link where anyone can really see all the books in our school libraries, but as far as requesting which books that there's children might have checked out, do they have to do like a freedom of information request? Like what are the procedures that you've established for this?
We don't even have procedures for that. Like we have not seen that. We have not seen parents coming in wanting a detailed list of everything that their kid has checked out. We deal mostly with parents approaching schools to see books that are being taught in classrooms, and we see that all the time. And that's a parent's right, and they have that right now. As I said earlier, they can come up to a front office, they can see, all right, what supplementary readers are in English 1. We give it right over. They can go into any library and they can ask if we have a text available, and our librarians and our library assistants field those requests all the time. But this new policy has yet to have any kind of regulation behind it. It's coming from the legislature, as Dr. Shaw noted. This is something the board has not passed yet, and we have not seen parents coming in this fashion and wanting a detailed list of everything that their kids have checked out. We would have to develop that.
So could you bring this item back when you've developed that process?
Can I
Sure.
just, so with respect to that piece of the process, I think that's actually the simpler piece. I mean, it's effectively a student records request, and we have mechanisms in place that I think we could simply have that become a part of. The more complicated piece of this is posting the purchased material for 60 days and giving notice to the families about where that's posted and where they can go look. And this, we have a system that's going to be rolled out for that, which is effectively, it's going to give notice to families at the schools that are affected about the websites that they can go to, and we'll have the materials posted. All the materials will be posted on a central site for the schools that are affected. It will be on a rolling basis, so they'll be up for 60 days, and then they get cleared from the website. And then each of the schools' websites will have, at least the affected schools, those schools that have the full-time library media specialist, will link to that central site, and we'll give families, probably annual notice of where to look and how to access those materials.
Couldn't they just put them up when the site council's meeting or something? Like it just is an item on the agenda, like as a FYI?
Put the materials purchased
No,
up?
put the fact that there are materials that, that we're going to discuss it at our site council meeting, just as an item on the agenda. We put the item on the agenda as, library, whatever, curriculum materials, that this is something that, we just sort of have to let everyone know because they post it. It's not like an elaborate posting, but it's a posting at every school specific to that school. And then they just share the link. They could be in the meeting minutes. And so I think we've done our part is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's a different way to go about it, but I think the bottom line is we get the notice out to families that this is where they find it. I don't even think we need to draw as much attention as putting it on a site council agenda might, but this is where to find it. They know where to go, and then again, it's on a rolling basis. It's just going to be continuously happening if they want to come look at it.
Okay. I don't, any other comments? We don't have a motion. I don't see anyone jumping to move that item. I'm just throwing it out there. No one seems to be willing. I'll go ahead and move the item because I worry with some of the changes at the state level, who might be in charge of the consequences for our district. So I worry about that. And so I'll go ahead and move the item. It dies for lack of a second. Okay, thank you, Mr. Aronoff. I moved it. I threw myself there on the sword and nobody wanted to jump in with me. Okay, so I guess you bring it back.
Appreciate it, Ms.
Yeah,
Grijalva. Thank
you're
you.
welcome. I don't know, bring it back? Not sure. Go ahead, Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, President Grijalva, board members, and this is a procedural question for our general counsel and associate general counsel. We have a formal motion that was not seconded and it died. With this iteration of the governing board, would we be eligible to bring the item back with the new iteration of the governing board that will take office in January?
It could be brought back at any time.
Or it can be brought back at any time?
And perhaps I can suggest that, that our office can provide the board with maybe a more detailed memo about the impact of not having this policy.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Not necessarily want to say everything I could say in
Oh, no, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Maybe next meeting or January. This might come back. It's open. Y'all figure it out.
I'm just
Okay.
here because the legislature made me.
I know. I moved it because I felt pressure, but I'm good. Okay, now we're on Governing Board Policy IKF, graduation requirements. This is a second reading.
This is also
enough.
mine.
Okay. Go ahead.
So there's a lot of red. I mentioned this during the first reading as well. There's a lot of red on this red line, but I do just want to emphasize that most of that is simply cleanup. Things are in red because they've been moved to other parts of the document, not because they've been taken out. The big addition, which again is based on legislation that was effective in September, is that beginning with the class of 2026, the graduation requirements will also require that students have passed the civics portion of the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services exam. They have to answer at least 70 answers of the 100 correct, and that's the new requirement for that class. So we've added in that as part of our graduation requirements just to reflect the new legislation, and this is the second read, so we're asking the board to adopt the policy.
Okay, thank you. Board members, any questions on? Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. So, yeah, I have a few questions. I will start, though, by pointing out something. If you could, let's see, can you scroll down, please, to maybe up a little bit more? Under XED, is the title. Under XED. Well, I'll just read it because I wrote it down on my thing. So yeah, under XED somewhere, wherever that is, it says that any student who is placed in XED classes, grades 9 through 12, is eligible to receive a high school diploma without meeting state competency requirements. And then further down, under graduation exercises preparation, which is all the way at the bottom of the document. It says that XED students who have chronologically aged out of high school will continue in a community-based education, will also be allowed to participate in graduation exercises, but will not receive a diploma or certificate. So I'm wondering what's the truth here? Because first we say that everyone who's an XED student in XED classes could receive a diploma without meeting the requirements, but then it says that we don't. So
it depends, I think, on the student. It's done on a case-by-case basis with an evaluation of that student's IEP and where they are academically.
Did that answer your question?
Not really, because if it just seems broad in the policy, but like maybe we should state that it's specific to each student.
If I could, and that's not new language, that's existing language, but like Mr. Aronoff said, a student with an IEP, their graduation requirements could be modified by the IEP. So in which case they would get a diploma. And then that second part that you pointed out says that students who have reached the end of the paid, the state paid education, they may not have completed all of their IEP requirements, but they will be allowed to participate in the ceremony, but will not be able to receive a diploma because they haven't met either IEP goals or state standards. Does that help answer the question?
I think it does.
Yeah, the previous paragraph says determined on a case-by-case basis. Of what you read, students who receive exceptional education shall not be required to achieve passing scores.
Okay.
That one, the one right, that one says case-by-case.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Uh-huh. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering if we can kind of tweak this. I know it's like from the state, but if we can like take out an elective and add it, like from our last meeting, I really think that we should make CTE classes mandatory, at least for 1 credit. At this moment, students have the option of taking fine arts or CTE class for that 1 credit, but I think like if we make CTE required in like freshman year, some students who might not take a CTE class will maybe have the opportunity to take 4 years of CTE if they were forced to at least take a beginner class. And I think, I don't have it pulled up, but I think it's like 6.5 elective credits we have. And so I would like to see that added. And also, like, there's no language requirement now. Why is that? And is there any board support to make language a required credit? I guess I'll just move to add 1 credit of CTE be mandatory and 1, well, I don't know. I'm just going to start with the CTE.
Does every high school have CTE available?
CTE satellite programs in all of our high schools. We also have CTE opportunities on both of the JTED campuses. I'm a big supporter and a big advocate of freshman access to CTE programs. And in my work in my previous district, we were blessed with having a 9th grade CTE survey. It was called Career Exploration, and it was a survey of all the different CTE programs available. And it was mandatory. And you took it for a semester, and then the other semesters when you took your PE or your other. But in those days, there was funding provided to school districts to do that. So though I'm a big supporter of it, I just want to be very transparent with the board. We don't have that 9th grade funding anymore like we did, like schools got in those years. So it would be an investment, and it's not to say it's a bad investment, it'd be a really good investment. We just would have to come with some cost estimates in terms of how many extra positions, how many extra teachers, and bring it together as a package.
And Dr. Trujillo, do all high schools have 7 periods or 0 hour, or do some of them just have 6?
Some of them just have 6.
And that's, I guess, where the issue would be for me if we were to try to make any graduation requirement changes, because some schools have the 0 hour, or you have 7 periods, and others have 6. And so if we were to say you have to take this, then it might limit some options for some of our, for other classes. And I know that world languages is a requirement for most universities. And so I think that hopefully our school counselors, all of our school counselors are going over that with students, because you have to have one. And usually they request 4 years. Yeah. I just worry about those students if we add a mandatory CTE. And CTE is not always available to freshmen, right? Because CTE is I thought it was upper grades.
we don't have any sort of like mandatory, and what board member Shaw's talking about is like a survey class, like a
Oh,
orientation.
no, I totally agree with
And we have, when you go into high school, you can go directly in to an established CTE program. There's nothing stopping anybody, but we don't really see a lot of that. You know, usually it's kids that have already been on that track and have that interest. And so there's thousands of kids that really don't know, because we don't have anything like a CTE survey class at 9th grade. They really don't know of the different programs that are available to them.
Okay. Any other board members? We have to have a motion.
Ms. Shaw, I'm wondering if, I do appreciate, I love CTE too, and I do appreciate your passion for it. But I'm wondering if, what Dr. Trujillo says, we don't know the monetary, you know, what's going to happen. Would you be willing to want to, I don't know, at least amend your motion to, can we look into that at a later date, provided information from the district?
I wouldn't like to amend it because I feel like it's just going to be put on the back burner, and then another year goes by and a student will be listless and have nothing to do and no opportunities and might miss a really important opportunity. From the meeting, a couple meetings ago, I think, I forget his name, the guy.
Mr. McCollum.
Yes,
Chuck McCollum.
that's him. He seemed to think that it was very feasible. He was very excited about the idea, and yeah, he said we'd get it done, and I think we should just get it done. That's what our students need. They need to understand the opportunities available to them, and freshman year is the year to do it so that they can be certified by the time they graduate.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Robbie.
Well, I think a lot of our students could benefit from it. I don't think all of our students need CTE classes, and especially those, you know, who are going into certain careers and have things kind of planned out and everything. I think having more requirements can take away from the electives and education that they want as well. So I'll be hesitant on making more and more requirements that aren't required by the state or other folks on this front.
I'm talking about the students who are failing, who don't want to come to class because there's nothing there in math, English, and social studies that interest them. Okay, there's thousands, like Dr. Trujillo said, thousands of students who don't know about these opportunities. And once they graduate, they have nothing to do. They can't get hired anywhere. And you know what? I think we can do this. We can offer a survey in freshman year. It's going to take a little bit of moving around, but we can do it. Mr. McCollum said we can, so let's do it.
Could I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Just with, and obviously you will continue to discuss the motion, but before we continue with the motion as is, I just worry, I think we ought to make it so that we're talking about next year's freshman class, because if we're talking about current freshmen who are now, you know, if we're expecting freshmen to do it, current freshmen are already not doing it potentially, certainly sophomores, juniors, seniors, so we should be, if we're going to make amendments to these requirements, we should be looking at the class of, would it be 2027?
Mm-hmm.
The incoming freshman class?
That sounds good to me.
I Hi. We'll take a quick break since you can't hear me. started again because it's 9 o'clock and we have still quite a hefty agenda. Okay, we were talking about graduation requirements when the buzzer went off. And Dr. Ravi, were you? Oh, no, I think you'd made your statement. And
I can't remember where we were.
Board member, I know. I think it was Board Member Shaw. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, thinking about it, like, you know, I do think it's important to have a survey. I don't want it to be a burden to students. Perhaps if we make it a 0.5 requirement, I don't know if that would that be enough for a survey? And is that like a semester, half a year? Like what, Dr. Trio?
It's a semester.
Yeah, that's what most districts used to do back in the day when that funding was there. It was just one semester, you took it, and then you moved on. You took the other semester long class you had to take was PE, and so you did those. We called it the flip. But there's that. Yeah, that would be my recommendation if this was to be pursued. Would be a semester.
But Dr. Trujillo, you said that we don't have funding.
Right. There is no funding.
Right.
So conceptually, it's great for kids and it's awesome to get them hooked into CTE, but we would have to invest, right? So
Yeah,
we would
and-
have to invest, which means going into your existing M&O and potentially your Perkins grant monies that are already there to sustain existing CTE programs to put the teachers there. But conceptually, yes, it's something that hooks kids into those programs.
I mean, I during our little break where the alarm stopped the meeting, I was able to ask Ms. Shaw like what she's really going for, and a lot of it has to do with students who just maybe don't have a lot of direction, maybe are not doing for whatever reason. And then you have the students that have a very clear path and are also, in addition to these graduation requirements, are adding 4 years of a language. And so I don't want to add to the number of credits that our incoming freshmen would have to complete, just because I know of those other courses that really are mandatory if you want to have a scholarship or get into universities. They have their own list of requirements, and this is really the minimum. They don't require PE to get into the university, but here it is. So I would be comfortable with passing this, but I do think that, a conversation with, when Dr. Trio talks with high school principals and counselors, I think it's really worth exploring. How do we engage? How are we going to try to engage students differently who really just don't have an interest in school because none of this is meaningful to them for whatever reason? I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I just know that it would be, at this point, difficult for us to do that investment, and for some, it would be something that would kind of deviate from their high school plan already. Dr. Ravi, did you have your hand up? Okay, so I'll go ahead and move the item as it is.
I'll second.
So I have a motion, a second from Dr. Ravi. Any other discussion?
If I may.
Yes, go ahead, Board Member Shaw.
Oh, man. I just really wish we could get that 0.5 in there. Mr. McCollum had mentioned that we get extra money if students do the full, 4 years, I think he said. And so I imagine that if we add more students to the whole pool who are exploring CTE, it would generate more money for the program. And I wonder if we can just table this item. I guess it's already been moved and seconded, but maybe if we can have some admin look into my suggestion of 0.5 CTE, so that we could see what the financial outlook would be for that, because I think it's a good idea, and I think there's some support, though everyone wants to be fiscally responsible except for me in this moment. And so,
I think that it would be helpful for Mr. McCullum to look at what it would look like to have that sort of survey class. I mean, and would that qualify as one of the years if they participated or not? Does it have to be 4 years in a specific program? I mean, I think that information would be helpful. And if we could figure out a way to fund it, I don't think there's opposition. It's just changing the graduation requirements, because we don't know what the state will do anyway. They might decide to change it regardless. Okay, so I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Item passes 3-1 with Board Member Shaw voting against. We've already addressed 8.1 and 8.2, so now we're on 8.3, Human Resources, Audit Review and Response Plan for fiscal year 22-23. Dr. Trujillo?
Yes, President Grijalva, members of the board, given the late hour, we would like to request to move this to a week from tonight for December 6th, and just wrap tonight with item 8.4 and give the board an opportunity to look at its calendar of upcoming governing board meetings for
Okay.
2023.
So 8.3 will come back, and 8.4 is review and approve meeting dates for all regular and special meetings of the governing board for the 2023 calendar year.
That's correct.
Okay. Can we pull that? Is that the working draft calendar? Or do we have? Okay.
Grijalva, members of the board, before I turn it over to Yolanda, who did some outstanding work on this, we had a couple of guiding principles, of which they're no surprise to any of you. Number one, stick to Tuesday nights. That's where we have everybody locked in. Number two, let's make sure that we're spacing board meetings out so we're going 2 times a month, giving our board members at least a week off in between. And then, of course, guiding principle number 3 is really staying clear of all of the holidays that land on these prospective board dates that are observed by different groups and religions in our district. So that's what we tried to do. That being said, there were some months that we're looking for your feedback on that Yolanda will bring to your attention, where we've had to kind of double up back to back.
I
So-
see you have one on Valentine's Day.
That was one of them.
You all have one on Valentine's Day.
So that was one, but January, obviously, because of the way Martin Luther King Day fell.
Is your mic on?
I don't know if it's because of my mask.
No.
No?
Go ahead,
I have
try.
it on.
There it is.
There?
Go.
Okay. January was one of the months. Because of the lateness of us coming back from fall break, we're not having the organizational meeting until January 10th. And then the following week was the Martin Luther King Jr. Day, so we kind of, with the holiday, it's kind of hard to come back to get everybody back in and get all the items in time.
That makes sense.
So we do have the back-to-back with the regular meeting on the 24th and the special meeting on the 31st. So I'm not sure if you guys are okay with that one. That would, like I said, be a back-to-back meeting.
I think with enough heads up, I mean, in the past, it's when we add in ones that people have an issue.
Yeah. And then, as Ms. Grijalva stated, February, it landed because we usually do the second Tuesday of the month for a regular meeting and the fourth Tuesday of the month for a special meeting. So this one landed on Valentine's Day, the regular meeting. I did put a tentative date to move it to Thursday. I just wasn't sure how you felt about that. Do you want to keep it on Valentine's? Do you want?
But do they get goodies on Valentine's Day? Here.
Is a Monday meeting unfeasible?
I think it's difficult for staff to get all the items together. That's why we normally don't do Mondays. Because they need that day to sort of, finalize questions and stuff.
I think we would have to get the draft probably on the 9th, which would be Thursday. Because usually we put the draft out on Friday so that you have time to review during the weekend. And then if any changes come up, that's when we changes on Mondays. So,
Yeah, because Wednesday and Thursday meetings will continue to be very difficult for me.
Right. So you're going to have to bring goodies to the boardroom. A heart cookie, perhaps.
Yeah.
Good. Board Member Shaw?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to point out, I find it odd that TUSD meets on Tuesday, City of Tucson, or City Council mostly meets on Tuesday. I think Board of Supervisors meet on Tuesday. All these important, we're all, it's all in the general area, and their constituents are our constituents, and so it's kind of odd that all of these very important meetings happen almost at the same time. I don't know how you juggle it.
Like next week's going to be a little rough too. I just think that a lot of it, the reason why we don't do Mondays for the most part is because it doesn't give staff an opportunity to get additional items together. So if whatever the board is, you look at your agenda on that Friday and say, you know, I need more information on this. This is, because that's when you have an opportunity to look at it. Then that Monday, working day, you call whoever your administrator is and say, I need more information, then they have time to do it. Otherwise, it's rough. So do you want to keep going through the calendar, Yolanda, and then we can come back and see if there's any other issues? Okay.
March was actually pretty easy. We have the March 14th and then the special meeting on the 28th with the spring break in between. April is also good, 11th and the 25th. Which May is the same way, the 9th and the 23rd, which is following our schedule. June and July are fine. I also put some tentative dates for student appeals for afterward school for the 17th and 18th, so that would be just a special executive session on those days. August, we have the 8th and the 22nd. September, we have the 12th and the 26th. And then October was the next one, because I originally had the special meeting on the 31st, but that's Halloween. So the fall break was actually a week earlier than what we usually have. So we had thought about doing another back-to-back meeting, which would be the 17th and the 24th, if you didn't want to do it on a Halloween.
No one wants to do it on Halloween.
So the 17th and 24th? Okay.
Is anyone, I'm just throwing in 2 cents. Y'all can decide, but everyone has kids.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think with well, poor Lily, she's going to be too old to trick or treat. But
That's not true.
That's true. That's true. She can trick or treat as long as she wants. But I think with my other colleagues and then some of the colleagues that will be coming onto the board, they've got either young children or grandchildren that they might want to take out that night. So
I think it's hard.
I
Halloween's.
think the back-to-back is okay with me for that.
Anyone have an issue with that? Dr. Trujillo?
Yeah, so just on the back-to-back, we can do that, and we've done it a couple times this year. I just want to make sure that our board members know, normally we spend an hour together getting ready and reviewing the agenda. So the week prior to those back-to-back meetings, we would prep for 2 meetings. So we would just adjust our prep time to probably around 90 minutes to 2 hours. So just making that time commitment, making you aware of that. And then in developing the calendar, Yolanda and I thought it would be a good idea to just pencil in a prospective virtual third Tuesday to catch months where we may have more long-term suspension / expulsion hearings than usual. It's also a good slot for grade appeal hearings if we have them in the spring months or in the fall. If you see that third Tuesday on the calendar, it doesn't mean we're scheduling a third board meeting. Most months we're not going to use them. But it's good to have it there. That way we can free up executive session for more substantive discussions. And then lastly, the adjustment, it's not noted here, but beginning in January, we want to discuss a potential 6 p.m. versus 5:30 start to our public meetings. It'll give us a little bit more time in exec to go a little deeper into some of those items.
And some of that has to do with the availability of board members earlier.
Correct.
Because we have historically would start, at 3 o'clock or whatever, but with our schedules, it was difficult to try to schedule those.
Yes.
And having that catch Tuesday for virtual hearings takes the pressure off of asking board members to be here at 3 o'clock because we've got 3 or 4 hearings and then still having time for exec.
Gotcha. All right, any issues specifically with what's here? And so for the option months, which were what, October and February?
So October and February were the.
So what did you all want to do for February? we want to stay with the Tuesday?
No, let's move to the 16th and we'll kind of figure it out from there.
Do you want to move to the 16th?
That's fine.
Michelle?
I'm okay either way.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. So Tuesday, Thursday.
I'd say
Dr. Ravi,
Thursday.
I think you're the.
Yeah, I mean, I might be able to attend, but like in terms of all of our staff and everyone else involved, I don't think we should have it on the 14th.
We should not have it on the 14th.
Correct.
Okay. So then, if there's no objection, then that would be the 16th. February 16th for the board meeting.
Unless there's another date that you,
Monday wouldn't work. No one wants to do it on a Friday.
yeah, and Wednesday would be the other option, so I don't know if that's, if
I
that would be
think,
an
I think
option.
we'll go with what you have here, unless
Okay.
Wednesday, same difference, right?
Difference now.
Okay,
Okay, I think
Thursday?
16th
Okay.
is what I'm hearing.
Okay. And then the November is just our usual one meeting for the month, unless something comes up, and then December is
You know,
also the one meeting.
I think that it makes sense if you can do it to schedule 2 meetings. You have 2
For
new board
November?
members coming on and a lot of really big issues that we might not have been able to explore in detail. Like, it's just come up.
Okay.
Where we're going to have a discussion and they haven't had the background that I think is going to be really important.
I'm okay with the 28th
For
of
the
November.
28th for November.
Or excuse me, 29th, yeah, Tuesday.
I just think
after
that you should
Thanksgiving.
schedule 2. If you don't need them, then you can always say, we're not going to use it. But I think that you should schedule it, and then if you don't need it, then you don't need it.
That Tuesday, 28th of November, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're going to do regular board meeting on the 14th and a special on the 28th?
Correct, uh-huh.
Okay.
And then December, we usually just do the one.
Mm-hmm.
That's Yeah. fine.
Just because of the winter break coming up, so,
Mhm.
okay.
And then October was
October.
not on Halloween, so we're doing 2 back-to-backs, the
back-to-back,
17th
so
and the
it'd be-
24th.
Yes, the 17th and 24th.
Okay, does anyone have any objection to that, what was discussed? And you have documented all the changes?
Yes.
Okay, so can I get a motion?
I'll move the item.
I'll second.
Okay, Clerk Luna Rose moved the item. Dr. Ravi seconded. Any discussion? More discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item passes 4-0. And now we're moving expenditure update, Dr. Trujillo? And we've done
Our moving expenditure update to next week.
we've done grade reconfiguration, and so now we're just on future meeting dates and agenda items. It's not even that late yet, I'm just saying. Okay, so anything else? Okay, so I guess that's it, and we'll see you all on Tuesday, December 6th. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.